An entitled jerk demands that we honor his old gift cards simply because he's a doctor, claiming that because he has the job that he does, he deserves special treatment over anybody else. Here's how it went down. So I'm a restaurant owner, and of course, I deal with loads of BS every single day. But this one time was just extra special, super crazy BS that honestly I can't get over. To start things out, we bought a restaurant in 2008. Lots of crap comes with that kind of purchase, and of course the equipment and inventory, but also existing customers, both good and bad. In many circumstances, the purchaser also inherits the issue of outstanding gift cards. Now, we did not receive any money or discount from the business purchase to cover the cash liability of the gift cards. So we decided it would be best to honor those old cards for a period of 1 year, starting the date that we took over all operations. We figured it would be seen as a good move that our guests would certainly appreciate. We put signs on the doors, posted on social media platforms even though it was limited back then. We even did a trade out with a couple local publications that our demographics relied on at the time. We had an upper crust clientele with lots of affluent people. Now, to help with separating the sales of the old cards, we made new ones with a new logo and everything, meaning that it was very obvious when someone was using the old cards. Now remember, we just comped all of those sales with no income whatsoever. Well, a year comes rolling around and we again announced that the old cards would be useless come said date. You know, whatever date that might be, and that anyone with one needed to use it up as soon as possible. Well, the final day comes and the signs are taken off the doors. The very next day, we had a table of 6 with one guy paying for the whole table. And wouldn't you know it, he wanted to use one of the old cards. I explained the situation to him and that it would be necessary to use another form of payment. But as you can probably guess, that didn't go over well. He then starts arguing with me, telling me that the right thing to do would be to accept his old gift card, which at this point was over a year old, most likely a couple of years old. We then go back and forth, around and around, and after a couple of minutes, he says to me, well, you know, I'm a doctor, so you should try to save face with me. Now, I had been very nice up to this point, but once he said this, I told him that his profession has nothing to do with it. But even though I was trying to talk, he kept cutting me off, trying to convince me that doctors were the best customers, even though, fun fact, they absolutely are not, and some of them are actually the worst, and that we should honor the card for him because of such. But I just shrugged my shoulders and I told him, well, if you leave now, I'll cut your bill in half just to get you out of my restaurant. And he was shocked at my chosen words, as anyone would be, I guess. But you know what? He accepted my offer and they left, never to be seen again, thankfully. And honestly, so many doctors have that God complex, that holier than thou attitude. I grew up in a medical family. My dad was a well-known doctor with a huge practice. His wife, who was my stepmom, was a nurse practitioner and worked in his office and did quite well. And I will say that there were times that dad acted in a similar fashion until I got into restaurant ownership. He slowly began to understand the amount of crap we deal with and that customers can really suck sometimes. And eventually he became a better customer. He had more patience with the staff, etc., and he was tipping way more than before. He definitely changed his tune after spending 5 years in prison, which is an entirely different story in and of itself. But he came out more humble and things like that. So this entitled jerk saying that he should get special treatment because he's a doctor honestly was not going to faze me for a single second. Wow, imagine being so entitled that you're like, I'm a doctor, you need to give me an exception. Like seriously, dude, who cares? Because the original poster is right. Your profession has literally nothing to do with anything going on in here. And the fact that he wants to be like, I deserve the best, you should honor these gift cards because I'm a doctor, you need to save face with me. It's like, my guy, you have no power over this restaurant in the slightest. Just because you're coming here and you've probably been going here for a while doesn't mean I owe you anything, bro. Like, what's going on right now? So good for the original poster for standing their ground, because this kind of entitled behavior is completely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for saying that I don't want my sister at my wedding? All because I'm convinced that she will try to ruin everything. Here's what's going on. For a bit of context, I'm a 28-year-old male, and I'm getting married to my amazingly beautiful fiance, who I will call Rosie, in a month. We met 4 years ago through my sister, who I will call Sophia, and from what I know, they were good friends before me and Rosie started dating. I knew Sophia would always be indifferent to my past partners, but I never would have thought that she would do that to somebody she was friends with way before. But clearly, I thought wrong. When Sophia realized we were getting serious, she would start making sly remarks and rude comments to Rosie. It always irritated me, but Rosie always told me it was fine and would always beg me to not say anything, so I never really did. But recently, since our engagement, Sophia has been a real jerk. In fact, Rosie had her as a bridesmaid, even though I don't see the point. Anyways, we had a gathering with the whole wedding party, and the girls were supposed to wear blush pink and the guys sage green, since they were our wedding colors. Meanwhile, I wore black and Rosie wore white. And honestly, I should have known that Sophia was gonna do something stupid, since she was 20 minutes late, but that's another problem in and of itself. Sophia showed up and she was wearing a white dress to the gathering. Like literally a white dress. And that honestly was my last straw. I told Sophia to either go home and change, or she can be out of the wedding. And I guess she thought I was joking because she laughed, but I was not. When she finally realized, she got defensive and told me it's just a color, which I replied that it wasn't, while also saying, look, it's not my fault you have some weird obsession with every girl I date. You're not gonna ruin my relationship with Rosie. I even told her that I didn't want her there at all, especially if she's gonna pull a stunt like this, which apparently was too far since my mom started yelling at me and the gathering ended early. Now, Rosie thanked me for standing up for her, but she wants me to apologize since Sophia is my sister. But honestly, I'm not gonna do it. So honestly, am I the jerk here? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, I think it's important to note that yeah, your sister is out of her mind and she is only acting this way to try and get under your skin and ruin your relationship. Like that's all that's going on, and honestly, it's not fair. She wore a white dress on purpose just to piss you guys off, or at the very least, test the water to see if she can get away with it. And that's crazy in my opinion. Like seriously, there's no reason to act that way. So no, you're not the jerk for saying you don't want your sister at your wedding. She's clearly gonna try and like ruin it in some kind of way, and honestly, I think getting ahead of this would be a really good idea. An entitled jerk I go to school with has been constantly bothering me and making me uncomfortable in ways that are completely inappropriate. So I decided to get some revenge by spoiling the ending of Marvel's Endgame, completely upending and ruining his experience with that movie since at the time he had not seen it yet, resulting in this guy finally leaving me alone. Here's how it went down. So this was back in 2019 when the hype for Marvel's Endgame was in full swing. I was in high school, maybe being 13 or 14 years old at the time, and for some reason this kid was obsessed with me. Like from the very start, he decided to constantly annoy me. He had written a song about me cheating on him even though we never dated, and had followed me around the corridors telling me that my butt looked nice. We lived in the same area of town, and he once followed me home, saying some pretty disgusting stuff to me, honestly, to put it nicely. Now, I tried telling the school, but they said he probably had a crush on me and to just ignore him. This kid loved Marvel, especially Iron Man. Like, he was absolutely obsessed. He had the theme backpack, a pencil case, everything. And when he wasn't pestering me nonstop, he was talking about Iron Man. Well, he got sick the same week Endgame was released and was off school for a few days. A few of my friends had seen it that weekend, and since I wasn't interested, they spoiled it for me and told me that Iron Man died at the end. Well, the kid came in next week after being ill and started bothering me once again. I knew that he had not seen Endgame yet, and to be honest, I just wanted him to shut up. But I was a really quiet kid who never retaliated. So I told him Iron Man died in Endgame. And yes, I know it's a bad thing to spoil things on the premise that you're not interested in that thing, but he was fully stunned. Like, the look on his face was absolutely brilliant, and based on the way he was treating me, he honestly really deserved it. Okay, first of all, the fact that the school is not doing anything about this is crazy to me. Like, why on earth are they letting that slide? Like, seriously, that's some crazy weird behavior, and that is absolutely not okay. But also, I think this is some really funny revenge because this guy deserves it. He's literally like bothering the original poster in a way that is absolutely uncalled for, saying these really gross remarks and saying, oh, you got a nice butt and all this weird stuff. Like, seriously, this is not okay. So the fact that you ruined probably his favorite franchise all in one fell swoop, like, that's funny to me and honestly so deserved. So good for you for scaring this guy away, because apparently, according to the original poster, this was super effective, because this guy absolutely deserved it. My entitled friends from high school thought that they could dine and dash from the restaurant I was a server at. So I decided to get some revenge by literally telling on them to their moms, getting them in trouble in a way that they will never be able to avoid. This is how I did it. When I was working as a server, some people I knew vaguely decided to dine and dash at the restaurant I worked at. These were high school friends of a friend, and it wasn't my table, but I was close with the server. And some restaurants make servers pay for walkouts for not paying enough attention to their tables. When anybody I vaguely know walks into an establishment that I work at, I always clock it and I try to avoid them. The town we live in is not a small town in Michigan, but I've gone to like 3 different school districts, so the chances of me running into someone that I know is very high, with bonus points being added if I'm friends on Facebook with them. But since they decided to dine and dash, I quickly went to Facebook and I looked them up. Then I messaged them and I said, hey, I know you dine and dashed, you need to come back and pay for your meal. But after they left me on red, I decided to get some revenge. I found their moms and I messaged them. Their moms thanked me for letting them know, and I don't really remember if the bill ended up getting taken care of because it was a long time ago, but I do remember giving my server friend the validation of knowing I tattled to their moms. Okay, dude, this is so messed up on so many fronts. First of all, the fact that any restaurant would make servers pay for walkouts, like, that is crazy and probably illegal somewhere in the world. I'm not sure about the specifics of it, so don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that is incredibly unethical. But secondly, who in their right mind would dine and dash in today's day and age? There are cameras everywhere, dude. Like, what are you doing? That is some serious stupid behavior that is just gonna land you in a lot of trouble. Not to mention the fact that you live in a small town. Like, chances are somebody's gonna know you from somewhere, and it's just gonna hurt your reputation, and everybody's gonna catch you in the act. So truly, to the original poster, I say good for you. People like this deserve to get caught because I literally can't stand people who steal, and the fact that they thought they would seriously get away with that, in my opinion, is some crazy behavior. Today, I messed up by winning a government surplus auction where I mistakenly got a 20-foot trailer that I thought was just a darkroom for my photography hobby, resulting in one of the weirdest situations I've ever been in my entire life. Here's how it went down. Okay, first of all, please cut me some slack because this happened when I was 13 years old. I was a young wannabe photographer, and I had been researching the cost of setting up my own darkroom. Now, this is a mostly lost art. You need an enlarger, film tanks, chemicals, paper, and dozens of other pieces of equipment. Plus, you needed a light-proof room with decent ventilation. My parents were mostly supportive, if not mostly disinterested. I was allowed to come and go as I please, and they were willing to let me use an unused bathroom at our house to set up my own darkroom. I just never had enough money to do it, so I used to have to use a rented darkroom at a local studio that charged by the hour. Now, my 15-year-old brother was a very early computer nerd and a phone freak. He had different projects going on all the time, and some of them were pretty sketchy. In fact, he used to buy stuff from the US government. They mailed him books for auctions and surplus disposal, etc. He had set up a bidding account and had bought crazy used electronics and decommissioned communications devices. It was all through sealed bid offers and conducted solely through snail mail. You would see a listing that you wanted, you would fill out a bidding form, and then send it through the mail. If you were the high bid, you would receive a notice sometimes 4 to 6 weeks later with instructions on payment. Well, he showed me a brief listing that caught his eye. It's been a while, but it said something like this: portable field darkroom, enlarger, trays, storage, self-contained with supplies and tools. The listing had dozens of abbreviations and other details that I didn't understand, and it was located 90 miles away in the San Diego area. Shipping was to be coordinated by the winning bidder. Now, when I saw this, I was very excited. My brother had gotten electronics and tools for pennies on the dollar. He agreed to send a bid for me, and after much deliberation on how much to bid, we came upon the magnificent sum of $80. There was little to no chance that we would even win, but honestly, who knows? So we just sent off the bid. When the end date came and went, I breathlessly checked the mail daily to see if I won. Finally, I received a very official-looking envelope with basically a notification and an invoice. And believe it or not, I actually won. We paid through a postal money order and received instructions on where to collect my triumphant spoils. And honestly, this is where things go very sideways. Now, we had no way of getting the stuff picked up. It was miles away. I didn't even have a bicycle at the time. Well, my brother worked out a deal with a super shady guy named Lance, who had a mini truck, all for a tank of gas and some stolen booze. And with that, we were mobile. So we drove down to the warehouse with my paperwork in hand. But it turns out we were going to a Marine base. So there we were. My brother, a slightly chubby, freckled redhead, me, the scrawny, prepubescent doofus, and Lance, someone who looks like they're straight out of the movie Dazed and Confused. As we got closer to the gate, Lance starts freaking out. He's got some special substances on him, if you know what I mean, and he's got no ID. After we explained who we were and why we were there, the gate guard had us driving to the holding area. They said to us, do not exit the vehicle and do not drive past the second fence. After about 25 minutes, a very stern-looking guy came out and walked around the truck. Gentlemen, I understand you're here to retrieve a parcel. We responded by saying yes, sir, and he responded back by asking if this was the vehicle that we intend to remove our property. He then asked for who it was that ordered this, and it's there that I got his attention by saying, it's me, I'm the one who did it. He then said to follow him and took us to a dusty field and storage yard where we passed building after building of neglected green junk. Everything was covered in tarps and tied with rope. Well, he finally stopped and said, do you see the problem here? And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? He then says to me, this is your darkroom. We were in front of a dilapidated 20-foot trailer from no later than 1960. It was filthy and sitting on very low tires. He opened the doors and said, go ahead, watch out for mice and spiders. Now, the inside was just as crappy and rotted as the exterior. Boxes of old photography supplies, unrecognizable canisters, and an ancient vintage enlarger that was probably state-of-the-art several years ago. Now, I was crestfallen, feeling completely dumb. The guy then basically said that he doesn't think our rig is going to tow this thing out of there. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, tow this thing? I wanted to get out of here and just never look back. I then asked him the burning question of, well, what happens if we don't pick it up? But this guy basically implied that we're not going to be going anywhere with it unless we've got a diesel rig hiding somewhere. So we left. As much as I wanted to split the blame with my brother, as he was older, this was completely on me. I told him it was a great deal and that I knew everything on the listing. And even though my money was gone, the worst was was yet to come. Sometime in the next few weeks, we started getting official-looking abandoned property letters, as well as notice of forfeiture, and then it finally happened. I came home from school one day, and there in front of my house was the green beast. My horror was compounded by the fact that it was blocking the driveway. I mean, there was no hiding this. I went inside the house, and I remember closing the drapes as if my parents wouldn't notice it when they came home, and I started frantically calling the numbers I had for the warehouse. It was about 3 to 4 tries in when I finally got someone on the line who could help me. They said to me, and they basically explained that they were going in that direction, and they just dropped off the load on the way. And I said to them, "Are you crazy? I'm a 13-year-old kid." And the guy on the other end said, "Well, according to the Department of Disposal, you're the owner of the surplus trailer." And then he hung up on me. Now, about this time, a small group of nosy neighbors and kids, mostly my friends, had gathered around to see the green behemoth. And this was perfect timing as my dad was rounding the corner in his car. My parents were not exactly engaged helicopter parents. My siblings and I pretty much did whatever we wanted with little to no supervision, and they only got involved when antics disrupted their lives. You know, with what's happening right now. Well, my dad wasn't a monster. He basically just said, just deal with it. And over the next few days, I cleaned it out and was able to move it so it wasn't blocking the driveway. After a few days, we decided to run an ad for it, and I eventually sold it to a hippie who showed up in a vintage postal truck and gave me $50 for the entire thing. I eventually built my own darkroom, and my family still teases me about the beast to this day, because this is an incident that still haunts me. Okay, this is a crazy situation because honestly, this is not your fault. These people did not properly advertise this, and they definitely didn't tell you exactly the dimensions of what you would be buying. Like, I'm sure you thought this was some small thing that you could set up in your house, not a 20-foot trailer you're gonna have to gut and clean out. Like, dude, what's going on right now? So good for you for getting it sold off and getting it off your property, because I'm sure that must have been a nightmare to deal with. Am I the jerk for not inviting my friend to our girls' night after she literally stole the spotlight last time she showed up? Here's how it all went down. I'm a 24-year-old female and I live in a small town where everyone knows everyone, and gossip spreads faster than free Wi-Fi. Me and my 2 best friends have a tradition once a month where we do a proper girls' night, just us with some good food and the kind of drama you only share when you really trust someone. Well, this is where Tina enters the story. She moved back to town a few months ago and has been trying to slide back into our friend group, and I was cool with it. I mean, the more the merrier, right? Well, no, I was completely wrong. Last month, we invited her to the girls' night for the first time, and within 10 minutes, she was telling everyone about her breakup, her new guy, and how apparently every guy in town has a crush on her. She interrupted every story we told and somehow made it about herself. Then, and I kid you not, she went on Instagram Live from my living room during the night, and it turned into a weird question and answer about her life, and she barely acknowledged the rest of us. Well, this month, I decided to keep girls' night between just me and my 2 close friends, meaning that I was not going to invite Tina. And now she's telling people in town that I excluded her out of jealousy and I don't want her to be happy. Half the girls in town are now direct messaging me, saying things like, "Oh, that's so mean. You should have included her." While the other half are saying, "Good, she's exhausting." So am I the jerk for protecting the vibe and not inviting her this time? Because right now, I'm honestly not sure if I'm in the wrong. Okay, honestly, it sounds like Tina is super obnoxious and one of those people who is always trying to like get the attention from everyone. And that just really sucks. It's really annoying, and after a while, it can really just drive you crazy. So if you want to have a girls' night with just you and your 2 friends, then you have every right to. Like, this is not something she should be expected to join up in, especially if she's gonna be annoying. And to anybody who's like, "Oh yeah, you should have invited her," if they really feel that way, then why not include Tina in their stuff? Because I guarantee you that Tina will pull the exact same crap, because from the sounds of it, this is just the kind of person that Tina is. Am I overreacting about my neighbors coming into my backyard, stealing my blueberries without my permission? Because right now, I feel like I'm going crazy and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, almost a year ago, my husband and I made the move out of the city and bought a beautiful home in a beautiful suburb that is somewhat historic. Our home is late 1800s and has been renovated, but with a lot of the historic aspects kept, like a beautiful old barn. With this home, the prior owners had fruit trees and a blueberry patch, with about 12 bushes altogether. The wife of the couple who sold us left me a guide to caring for the fruit trees and the bushes, and apparently there are multiple types of blueberries, and they were one of her big passions. I was super excited to have land for my dogs, get to garden, and take care of the existing fruit plants. We moved in last fall, and this is our first year having to care for everything. Last fall, we put us a fence around our property so that the dogs can go out in the yard whenever they want. Well, the other day, my dog started barking like crazy, and mind you, they are not very vocal usually. I went out to see what was going on, and a woman with 2 kids was yelling at them in my yard. She had a bucket in her hands and her arms were flailing. I ran over to see what she was doing in our yard and what the issue was. She said my dogs were bothering her and she had come to pick blueberries with her kids. And I was like, sorry lady, this is private property and my dogs are just protecting their home. She then told me that she had permission from the owner and for the last few years they came down to pick blueberries and her kids always look forward to it. I then explained that we bought the house about a year ago and we aren't comfortable with that and that she needed to leave. She then went off on a rant about how the previous owner had always allowed it. And she even said it was rude of me to put a fence up. And I'm just thinking to myself, what is going on right now? Well, I ended up telling her to leave or I would call the police. She was fuming and said something about us ruining the neighborhood. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, cool, whatever. I then messaged my husband because he was at the office and he told me straight up that we should get a lock for the gate. I'm worried if this lady comes in again or another neighbor who had prior access to her property does, our dogs might get out or they might get protective. We have two larger rescue dogs who are sweet, but they're dogs, so stuff can happen. Also, this lady never came to introduce herself when we moved in, yet she expects us to let her pillage our fruit. I feel like I maybe should report this in the chance that something else pops up, but I just don't know. So overall, am I overreacting here? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. No, your neighbor's crazy, dude. Who in their right mind would like go on someone else's property like that and be like, oh yeah, I had permission from the other owner. And it's like, dude, you clearly know the other owner moved out, right? Like this is clearly not the person who used to live here. So you being like, well, the other people let me do it. Like that crap just doesn't fly in my opinion. And it doesn't make any sense. So no, you didn't overreact. This lady's insane for doing this. And I think setting up a gate or some kind of cameras around your property would probably be a really good idea, especially considering the fact that this lady did it once and there is no saying that she wouldn't try and do this one more time.
Power-hungry mother pays for our wedding photos as a gift, but then thinks she owns them just because she paid for them. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. So my wife and I are young and didn't have much money, so we asked our respective parents to help out as much as they could. Her parents, who are amazing people, help way more than we could have ever asked, and never asked for anything in return. They actually were surprised that my wife was able to pull off as much as she did with the small amount we had. My dad had recently been through a terrible divorce and had moved to a new place. I didn't feel comfortable asking him for money, so the majority of the load was left to my mother and stepfather. One thing about my mother is nothing is ever simply a gift with her. Everything comes with a twist. You just never know when she'll use it against you. When we mentioned that we needed help, of course she was more than happy to help. Her gift to us was to pick whatever photographer we wanted, no matter the price. We happily accepted and thanked them both. Fast forward several months later, the wedding is finished and we are barely a month into our marriage. A little more background about the story. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was in the late stages of dementia. He no longer recognized anyone, believed his dreams were real, and never really answered with anything much more than the occasional yeah to anything he was asked. It was a rough time watching him turn into this. Of course, my mother refused to believe he didn't know who she was or who I was, and regularly told us that we were wrong when we would try to convince her he was absent mentally. So the wedding is done and we're waiting for the pictures. All 699 of them. Occasionally in contact with the photographer to check in and see how things are progressing. It was always a friendly conversation. One day, my wife receives a concerning email from the photographer, asking her to please have my mom stop harassing her for pictures. Confused by this new information, we ask her what she's talking about. According to the photographer, my mother had been emailing and texting her multiple times throughout the week, asking for any pictures she had finished, without telling me or my wife. She was trying to see pictures from our wedding before us. Of course, I immediately call her. I will admit I was angry and I went about it in a way I should not have, but I also feel justified. So I call her and confront her about not only how she was treating the photographer, but also about sneaking behind our back to get pictures before we do. Instead of owning up to her mistakes, she tried the power move thinking I would back down. Because she is my mother after all. She stated to me with complete sincerity in her voice that since she paid for the pictures, she should be able to see them when she wanted. Of course I lost it, not so politely reminding her that it was a gift to us from her and my stepdad, and that if she was intending to act this way, she should have just found her own photographer. When she realized the power move wasn't going to work, she turned to guilt bringing in my grandfather. This of course angered me even more. She said that she wanted the photos so she could take them to show my grandfather and that it was wrong of me to deny him seeing these pictures before he passed. At this point, I had made up my mind, and out of pure disbelief, I had nothing to say. So I quietly informed her that she would receive the pictures when me and my wife felt comfortable showing her, and that she needed to stop harassing the photographer, or none of us will get pictures. To this day, she has not received the pictures. The most surprising part is that she hasn't even asked for them. Not too long ago, I asked my stepdad why. He was clueless that all of this was happening, and he said she was still trying to make me feel guilty about how I talked to her. That's my mother, ladies and gentlemen. Always the master manipulator. That really comes with a sense of entitlement, thinking that you can see the wedding photos before the actual wedding couple. Why don't some people just have patience? You will get to see the photos. Trust me, the couple wants them as quickly as possible, and I'm sure they'll show them to you too. Harassing the photographer, though, is not doing anyone any favors. But it sounds like this woman has been doing this throughout our poster's entire life. I'm sure she was very difficult to grow up with. They wanted a $300 deposit for me to rent a van, but luckily there was a workaround. Just happened today, but very satisfying for me. I bid on some furniture at an online auction. I was surprised I actually won it, but very happy too. It was mostly small pieces, but big enough that it wouldn't fit in my car. So I decided to rent a van. The major Midwest hardware store in my city has a special where you can get the van for $18.95. Their website said weekend rates were higher and I'd have to pay a deposit, but that was all. I figured it was still cheaper than a rental place, so I went bright and early this morning and went to customer service. I asked the customer service lady about the process. She took copies of my license and my insurance and plopped the rental agreement on the counter.
Are you transporting things purchased here?
No, just some furniture.
Okay, without the purchase, it's a $300 deposit on a credit card.
Okay. I know it's a vehicle and it's worth more than $300, but that's a big deposit for bringing it back in an hour. So I looked around and saw the snack cakes display. Actually, I'll be transporting things I bought here too.
Since you said you weren't, I have to have it on the same transaction.
Not a problem. I grabbed a sleeve of little donuts and laughed as my total dropped from $330 to just over $100. I ran my card and finished the transaction in silence. When I returned the van, it got a very thorough walk around by the manager. I got my deposit back on my card from him and saw my cashier still staring daggers at me from the back. I was very glad I saved big money with their van today. Honestly, that feels more like an oversight of the company. If it can literally beat any purchase, then yeah, of course people are going to abuse it. It's not like you can blame the guy for wanting to save a couple $100 on the deposit. Besides, he brought it back without any issues. Why shoot him dirty looks? My brother didn't like the way I was doing his laundry, so I tried something different. My brother and I have never really gotten along. He's very OCD and controlling. I don't respond well to him. As kids, we had chores. More than our friends, but nothing abusive. For several years, I did all the dishes and he did all the laundry. Then, when I was 12, he wanted to switch. I got pushed into it. He decided to nitpick every little thing I did with the laundry. After screaming at me for close to an hour for not ironing all of his clothing, I decided to do what he wanted. I figured out how to use the old-fashioned starch, and I used heavy starch on all of his clothing. I went into his room and took out every single item out of his closet and drawers and starched and ironed it all. He thought he had a package of underwear that was new. I found it and starched them and ironed them. Of course he blew a gasket, started screaming and throwing things. My parents were very tired of his rages. My father helped me make it so he couldn't use the washer to wash out his clothing. My parents refused to take him to a laundromat to wash his clothes, telling him he needed to make it up to me and stop being a jerk. Apparently, he ended up with a rash on his private areas from the scratchy starch. He never again fussed at me to iron anything. I still don't iron. I haven't owned one in almost 20 years. I don't ever intend to own one. I definitely feel like your brother went a little overboard with this one. Sure, it's your job to do the laundry, but ironing everything out feels like a step too far. If that's the level of detail that you're looking for, then maybe you do that last step yourself. That's not a small task you're asking for. It can take a while, and his behavior on top of that is just unacceptable. I'm glad the parents backed our original poster on this one. Don't tell your underpaid employees to go find another job. They will. I was working for a small local store chain. 17 stores across the state, paid $1 over minimum wage, apparently had decent benefits if you were full-time, they made sure no one was, and wasn't too terrible. Then last week, the entire staff at a different store quit at once. Didn't think much of it, until our boss's boss came in and said he needed people to go cover that store. It was 42 miles away. Do we get any sort of raise or gas money?
No, we don't pay you to drive to work.
Will we work 8-hour shifts?
No, you're all part-time employees.
Of course, everyone started voicing their disapproval. Half of us don't drive at all, and most share a car with a family member. We're making maybe $20K a year, and now they want us to drive over an hour each way in traffic to work a 3 to 5 hour shift? The director got upset and said, "I'll be back tomorrow and expect 4 volunteers. If you don't want to be a team player, I suggest you find another job." So I did just what he suggested. Went online and found companies offering entry-level positions for several dollars an hour more, and some even had a signing bonus. I had 2 interviews set up the same day and ended up taking a warehouse job that paid $3 more and had a $1,000 bonus after 120 days. 2 other coworkers got a job there as well, and we're encouraging everyone at our store to apply. Apparently, the job market has gone crazy lately, but none of us were really looking. We didn't realize we were underpaid. Those jerks were just taking advantage. Another classic case of a company taking advantage of its bottom line workers. You can't just expect people to drive that kind of distance without some kind of compensation. You have to make it worth their time. They're doing you a favor, and threatening their jobs is not okay. I hope there was a lesson learned here to have a little bit of consideration for your employees. I feel like in recent years, things are starting to get better, but there's still a long way to go. I bought my niece a fake version of the expensive bag she wanted just to humble her for once. I'm a 38-year-old female. My niece, 15, is very spoiled by my brother and sister-in-law. She's an only child and also the first and only grandchild to my parents. Ever since she was younger, my brother, sister-in-law, and parents gave her everything and anything she wanted. Never said no to her. You get the gist. Due to this, now at 15, she is a nightmare to deal with. Everyone just basically gives her whatever she wants because, you know, she's the baby. My husband, 42, and I are child-free by choice. We both have good careers and do very well for ourselves. I've always had an expensive taste when it came to clothing, jewelry, bags, etc. A few weeks ago, my husband and I went over to my parents' house for a family lunch. My brother, sister-in-law, and niece were there too. The conversations were mainly catered around my niece because her birthday was approaching. My parents asked what she wanted for her birthday this year. She told them that she wanted a specific designer bag worth around $2,200 US. My parents were completely taken aback and kind of started laughing, telling my niece that's a bit excessive, and there's no way they're spending that kind of money on a bag. My niece then turned to my husband and I and said, "Well, you guys can get it for me then. You're rich, but you always get me cheap gifts." My husband and I were both taken aback at how ungrateful and rude she was acting. The gifts we get her aren't cheap at all. And also, the sheer audacity of a 15-year-old demanding I get her a $2,000 bag. My sister-in-law jumped into the conversation saying how I have all these bags and flaunting them around my niece is only going to make her want them. So, pretty much saying, I made my bed, lie in it, and get her the bag. I think they left the conversation thinking they guilt-tripped me into getting her the bag. Well, they were wrong. I hopped onto one of those designer dupe wholesale websites and ordered a bag for like $60. The bag came in around 2 weeks later. I wrapped the gift and brought it to my niece's birthday party. Fast forward. She saw mine and my husband's gift and got super excited. She opened her gift and immediately her face dropped. She turned red in the face. You could tell the bag was fake. She asked us, "What is this? Is this a joke?" I said, "No, this is your gift. Maybe in the future you should be grateful for the gifts we get you. It's not the price that matters, it's the thought." My niece started crying, calling us cheap and embarrassing. My sister-in-law had some not so nice words either. My brother, sister-in-law, and parents are upset because I let down my niece and think I should apologize. I think she needed to be humbled, and that her parents should encourage her to apologize to me and my husband for demanding us to buy her the bag in the first place. Am I the jerk? No, absolutely not. I'm completely behind our original poster on this one. Your niece sounds like she needed to be humbled, and it sounds like you've done the world a service. It takes a lot of entitlement to expect your aunt and uncle to buy you a $2,200 bag. That's insane. You're 15 years old. You don't even know the value of a dollar yet. You want that $2,200 bag? Get out there and get a job and work for it, and then you'll understand exactly how much $2,200 is. I blew up at my husband for sharing pictures of our daughter's birthday celebration when he knows how my family feels about it. Ever since my brother passed away at the age of 17 on his birthday, my family decided to never celebrate birthdays ever again. It was my mom and dad's decision, but because of how much the family loved my brother, extended family decided to do the same and stands in agreement with this decision. My husband would refuse to follow this and kept celebrating his birthday. Me and the family didn't say a thing about it since he's not blood family. But when I first got pregnant, the argument about celebrating our daughter's birthdays occurred. My family advised me to just not celebrate her birthday, since she's a baby and won't even remember anyway. I agreed, but my husband threw a fit and insisted that we celebrate our daughter's first birthday. I caved in eventually, but told him we'd have a small secret celebration so that my family wouldn't find out. He agreed. The next day, I got a call from my mom and she was so upset, saying that my word meant nothing and that I have no respect for my brother's memory nor the family. I asked what she meant and she told me she saw the birthday party pictures my husband posted on social media. I was too shocked to even argue. I hung up and went straight to my husband to confront him about it. He got defensive and said that he didn't need my permission to post pictures, and that he wanted to show his family the birthday celebration pics since I had insisted we have a small secret party and exclude them. I explained to him how this made me look bad and a liar to my family, but he said they can get over it and called my mom snobby. I blew up at him and we had a huge fight about it. He started sulking later and said I ruined the memory of our daughter's first birthday for him and verbally abused him with how I lashed out. But I solely did it out of frustration, knowing that what happened caused a massive problem between me and my family. Now he's expecting an apology from me. Am I the jerk? Honestly, this is a really strange tradition to keep. I get it's about honoring your brother's memory, but I don't think this is something that your brother would have wanted. I'm sure he would want everyone to go on and enjoy their lives and enjoy their birthdays, not to have the world of birthdays come to an end just because he's gone. I'm sure if your brother was still around, he would have loved to have been there for your daughter's birthday and to have seen all the pictures. This seems like a very selfish thing to do, honestly. I get that maybe it was hard for the first little bit, but time goes on and wounds do heal, but you have to let them. Clearly, this being such a big point of contention with your family means that they're still holding on to this and have just attached it to birthdays in general. They need to have some disassociation and move on. I'm sorry for your loss, but don't let it continue to cause loss in the rest of your life. I called my stepfather a controlling jerk when he said I can't take my sister out for fast food anymore. I, 27-year-old female, have a half-sister who's 13. I moved out about 4 years ago, and ever since then, I've been taking her out about once a week to hang out and get food. Usually sushi, Chinese food, or Subway, my sister's favorite. This is our bonding time. We both love food, and getting out of my parents' house gives her the opportunity to vent about what's going on at home, or just relax and watch YouTube videos and browse memes on Reddit. She's told me how much she appreciates it, and I often get text messages from her asking to go out when I've missed several weeks in a row. My stepfather, 53, hates when I take my sister out. He's been in my life since I was 2, and he started making my life hell when my half-brother, who's now 18, was born. I could write a whole novel about the things he did, but the relevant issue here is that he caused me to have an incredibly unhealthy relationship with food. When I moved out at 22, I was just shy of 300 pounds and had absolutely no skills when it came to regulating my eating habits. In the past few years, I've done a lot of work. I've been seeing a professional and I've managed to get my weight down to 230, which I consider a huge step in the right direction. My sister is an athlete, and I don't say that lightly. She's in the highest level league for her sport of choice, and if everything goes well, she'll probably have a full ride scholarship when she eventually does go off to university. As a result, my stepfather has gotten obsessive about what kind of food they keep at home. My sister often complains to me about how stifling it is, and she's even expressed to me things that make me worry she might start developing an eating disorder. I've told all of this to my mother, but she's a bit of a wet blanket when it comes to my stepfather. Well, I brought her home the other day from one of our outings, and I get a text from my stepfather. He basically said I'm not allowed to take my sister out for fast food anymore, as I'm messing up her sports and he doesn't want her to get fat like me. I blew up at him, told him he was a piece of crap and a complete jerk. I laid out all the things he did in my childhood that caused me to be overweight and have an unhealthy relationship with food, and said if it wasn't for me, my sister would probably already have an eating disorder with how controlling and obsessive he is about food. He told the whole family that I was being disrespectful to him, and now everyone is divided. Part of my mom's side of the family, who knows how my stepdad can be, is proud of me for standing up for myself and telling him the truth. The rest of my family is on my stepdad's side, saying I'm disrespectful and that he's just doing what's best for my sister. He's demanding an apology, and while there's no way that's going to happen, I'm wondering if I went too far in telling him what I thought. So, am I the jerk? I don't think you went too far in telling him what you thought because he didn't hold back on you. Newsflash, he's not a perfect person either, and if he's going to be dishing it out, then he better be ready to take it too. You're allowed to have a relationship with your sister, and she's allowed to go out for food. I get that being an athlete, you need to watch certain things, but I'm sure she's doing that, and it hasn't been a hindrance up till now anyway. This really just feels like a control move on your stepdad's part. From what it sounds like, it seems that you're the only one that isn't his kid. And just from this little bit of interaction, I can kind of tell that he doesn't treat you the same. He seems to look down on you and feels that that's going to influence his daughter as well. What he doesn't seem to realize is that you're actually the positive influence that she needs, when all he's bringing to the table is negativity. It's one thing to be supportive. It's entirely different to be the level of controlling that he currently is. I hope you guys figure it out so you can still find a way to spend time with your sister. Maybe she needs to be the one to stand up to him. Or, God forbid, your mother.
Bowling alley destroys my bowling ball, so I take the owner's $200 ball to get even. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I had forgotten about this until recently, and I thought I would share. It isn't a huge thing, but it resulted in me getting something I wanted but couldn't afford and then winning money with it. When I was younger and through my early to mid-adult years, I was an avid bowler, 200 plus average back when that actually meant you were good. Before the bowling ball technology boom, which really comes into play here. And I worked at the local bowling center from the time I was 16 through 21 or so, and then again later on in my early 20s. Working the back as one of the pin setters, front of the house, etc. So I knew how things operated and what could go wrong and things like that. I was bowling at a different center one day. After each shot, my ball came back with a small nick out of it. Nothing major, but yeah. So I put that ball away and brought out an old one that I never use, but it was in one of my bags. So next 2 or 3 shots, another nick each time. 4th frame, it finally came back with a fairly large chunk taken out of it. Usually that means there's a nail or a screw that has worked its way loose and the ball is catching on it, or a piece of metal is broken near the ball lift and is cutting into it. I take the ball up to the counter and tell the manager and show him what happened. Now, I was only 4 frames into the game and said I would move, but he said no. They couldn't move me as they had a party coming in and no lanes available. He said just keep bowling and the pro shop will repair the ball. I asked if he was sure, and he said yeah, he'll go in and tell them to fix it and the center would pay for it. Most pro shops are individually owned and operated. The owner rents the space from the center and this was no exception. Now, having done simple pro shop work, I know for a fact there's no way it can be fixed if I keep bowling with it and this keeps happening. One gouge can be repaired fairly easily as long as it's not on the track of the ball. The track is the contact point where your ball rolls down the lane, so anything in that line just can't be fixed and will throw off the ball as it rolls since it can't be perfectly rounded back. Depending on the core of the ball and how you throw it, the track can be 3 to 4 inches wide as the ball flares going down the lane. But massive multiple gouges all over the place? No way. So I keep bowling, 2 or 3 games, knowing that I'm getting a new bowling ball out of this. Of course, the huge chunks keep coming out of the ball. I get finished and there probably isn't a 2-inch by 2-inch section of the ball that isn't damaged. I take the ball into the pro shop and the conversation goes like this. What the hell happened to this ball? Did it get hung up in the pin setter or something? The lane I was on damaged it each time I threw it. The manager said you would fix it. Why did you keep bowling? I can't fix this. The manager told me to keep bowling after I showed him the first gouge. The pro shop guy then calls in the manager of the center. I know you said he was bringing in a damaged ball, but did you tell him to keep bowling after you saw the damage?
Yeah, we couldn't move him, so I told him to just bowl out his games and you'd fix it.
I can't fix this. You're gonna have to replace his ball.
What?
They continue arguing back and forth about why it can't be fixed. The ball that I have, they don't carry, which adds another problem.
Fine, I'll replace it with anything on the wall except for the Excalibur.
The Excalibur was almost 50% more expensive than regular bowling balls. It was the first reactive resin ball on the market. Reactive resin is a compound that made the ball hook much more than a traditional urethane ball. It revolutionized the game, and ruined it according to some, since it allowed average and below average bowlers to suddenly improve drastically due to not having to be anywhere near as accurate, and took a lot of the skill out of the game. But I digress. So I can pick any ball other than the Excalibur and you'll pay for it, drilling and all.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. The manager then leaves. Can I have store credit for that ball on the wall, but then apply it to the Excalibur and I'll pay the difference? Sure, we can do that. He then proceeds to measure my hand and drill the ball, and I pay like $40 for what would have been a $150 to $200 ball that I definitely couldn't have afforded at the time. I bowled my second ever 300 game with it less than a month later, and won 2 center tournaments with it and a bunch of high game pot money during league play. That ball paid for itself 10 times over in the first 2 months. Turns out the manager being an ignorant jerk paid off for me. I mean, there's nothing really bad about this situation for our poster here. This is really all on the manager. It could have been easily avoided by just putting that lane out of commission and letting the guy move to another lane. I get that you have a party, but there's a problem with that lane. You can't let him keep bowling on it, and I don't understand how his lane time is still worth you having to pay for the damages to his ball. If anything, maybe just give him credit for a couple of games and say, I'm sorry I can't let you play today because I have those lanes reserved. But this just feels like the worst possible decision the manager could have made, at least for his own interests. Our poster got off quite nicely. Customer service lady is rude and not paying attention, so she escorts me out despite the fact that I didn't even pay. I was biking around downtown and got a flat tire, so I went to the nearest shop to get it fixed. They only allow one person in the store at a time due to COVID, so when it was my turn, I went inside and talked to the middle-aged woman at the cash. To be honest, she wasn't very polite, but I thought nothing of it because not only do I work in retail and know what it's like, but everything is 10 times worse right now due to COVID. So anyways, after tolerating her for a few minutes, she tells me to wait outside until the bike is ready. Cool, no problem. I wait outside for maybe 15 minutes or so before I see my bike get brought back up to the cash. I waited a few more minutes for the lady to invite me back inside, but to no avail. After a few more minutes of waiting, I let myself inside, to which she said,
Excuse me, your bike isn't ready yet. Wait outside until I tell you it's ready.
Cool, no problem. I gave her another 15 minutes of my time before letting myself back inside, and we had this exchange.
Do you not listen? I told you to wait until your bike is ready.
I'm sorry, I just noticed the repairman bring my bike back up, and I think it's ready.
Too bad, it hasn't been fixed yet.
This broke me. So I just said, okay, thanks for your time, I'll be leaving. She looked a little flustered, but nonetheless held the door open for me as I grabbed my bike, walked outside, and rode away with a free tire exchange. Thanks, jerk. I don't know, maybe this lady was just having a bad day, being rude for no real reason and then just not paying attention to what's going on around her on her job. Either way, worked out nicely for our poster here. So far, we just seem to have a trend of good customer service. I tried to warn my manager that what he was saying was gonna lead to a disaster, but he wouldn't listen. About 5 years ago, I was working as a production supervisor for a metal forging company. We had recently acquired a transmission part for a well-known American motorcycle brand. This part was being made on a hydraulic press, and we had trouble with the part melting our dies due to the unique shape of the part and the fact that this part should have been made on a forging hammer press, not a hydraulic one. We were getting very behind on the customer orders due to the fact that we typically had to either repair or replace dies approximately every 1,500 pieces. This is in contrast to other parts that had die lives exceeding 6,000 pieces. My manager, who had only been on the job around 6 months, pulls me into the office and tells me on the next run, do not shut down for any reason unless the forge press breaks down. I tried to clarify that the dies would not last and I would have to stop the process occasionally to replace dies. He was emphatic that under no circumstances was I to shut down the process. He even went so far as to email me a reminder of this. Hopefully you can see where this is going. Over the next run, we did not stop. Even though my quality control guy is losing his mind over how bad the parts are. I tell him, don't worry, it's all on me in my head, as he doesn't know about my manager's demand. We set a production record, even though maybe 1,000 out of the 4,000 pieces we produced are actually good. Next day, plant manager and quality director pull me into the office. It's explained to me that I'm probably gonna lose my job due to the fact that I blatantly allowed non-conforming parts to be produced. I asked if I could print an email for my defense. I get quizzical looks, but the plant manager okays it. I print off an email from my manager stating not to shut down for any reason and hand it over. My manager gets reamed. I get a firm reminder that regardless of demand, we must assure quality over quantity and that the only reason I was not terminated was the fact that I was acting under explicit direction from a manager. But hey, I tried to warn the jerk. The one thing that stands out to me is that as the low-level floor worker, you were immediately threatened to lose your job, and the manager just gets chewed out? He's the manager. He's the one that's supposed to know better. You would think if anyone would be losing their job over this, it would be the manager, because it happened on his watch and he okayed this. But anyways, in this case, our original poster just did what they were asked. Can't hold someone at fault for doing what they're told by their superior. I threatened to sue my sister-in-law for losing my $2,000 camera. I'm a 26-year-old female. My sister-in-law, 20 years old, moved in with me and my husband weeks ago because of problems with her boyfriend. She isn't planning on going back till he apologizes, even though she broke his Xbox in an argument. I'm a blogger. I have a small space in our apartment, sort of like my office, but very small where I work for hours. Sister-in-law always enters the room and takes stuff and doesn't return them, resulting in me replacing them, till I got a lock. She was going to the beach with some friends to let off some steam and asked if she could borrow my $2,000 video camera to record the trip, but I declined and explained that I was working on the weekend and would need it. I got done with my project and left my camera at the desk. When I woke up the next day at 9 a.m., I had a shower, then breakfast, and entered my office, but didn't find my camera. I freaked out and my husband told me to calm down because his sister took it to the beach. He assured me it was in safe hands, but I kept worrying about it and was upset by the fact that she took it and he gave her the key. She got back at 7 p.m. and was peeved talking about getting in a fight with her boyfriend after seeing him with someone at the beach and it ruined her day. She started crying loudly and cussing him out. I asked for my camera back and she said she didn't have it. She left angry after the encounter and forgot her sunglasses, cream, hat, and my camera at the beach. Her friend Aiden picked up some of the stuff and brought it back, but the camera apparently got stolen. I started yelling, calling her irresponsible and reckless, and that this was my $2,000 camera she left behind. She started apologizing, then tried to blame it on her now ex-boyfriend for getting her into a fight with the girl he was with. I said, I need the camera for my work, and she had to replace it like yesterday. My husband got involved and said it wasn't her fault it got stolen and suggested I buy a cheaper camera from Amazon for now till I could afford to buy a new one. I said, what? Why should I buy a replacement when it was his sister who lost it? She took it without permission and was responsible for whatever happened afterwards. He tried to make excuses for her about being an emotional mess. I said, I have no problem suing her. He asked if I was serious, and I said yes, because I've worked hard to get this camera, and my work's always been known to be of high quality. So for him to suggest a cheap cam from Amazon was offensive. He said he was just trying to help fix the problem, but I said he was just helping his sister avoid responsibility. Both him and his sister aren't speaking to me anymore, and suddenly are claiming they're giving me time to calm down, where in fact they're cold shouldering me, making me feel guilty for saying that. I'm not sure if doing this will be the morally right thing though, since she's family as my husband says. So am I the jerk? I would like to have some sympathy for the sister-in-law here, but honestly, I'm having a hard time. She sounds like a little bit of a drama queen, and the fact that she asked for the camera, you said no, and then she took it anyway and lost it, she should feel responsible for it. Now, going and suing her for it, I don't know. That's a very serious step, and as your husband points out, she is family. But I totally get where the instinct is coming from. I think the question you really need to ask yourself is $2,000 really worth all the trouble this is going to cause? I do think your husband should be supporting you more here, though, and understanding that yes, your sister might not be in a great place, but she still needs to be responsible. My ex-wife chewed out our kids for not acting sad at their stepdad's funeral, but they never really liked the guy. My ex-wife and I share 2 children. Our daughter is 13 and our son is 11. She was remarried for 7 years and has 2 children with her late husband. He died a week ago. My kids were not close to the man. He was a bit hard and the kids found him overly strict. And I agree, so they didn't like being around him. The relationship at best was strained, but they confided in me over the years that they hoped their mom would leave him. She loved the guy though, and when he died last week, she was a mess. Our kids were with me when it happened, and she wanted to see them, so I brought them over. They comforted their mom and she told them repeatedly it was okay to cry. It was okay to miss him, that they were all going to miss him. The kids said nothing. She kept repeating it. I told her, I think the kids got it. When the kids saw their mom again, she was halfway through planning the funeral and asked if they would be able to do a reading or something for the funeral. The kids said they wouldn't be able to. She was with them a while and then said since they weren't crying much, maybe they could take a reading and see how they did on the day. My kids told me about it when I spoke to them, and they asked if I could talk to their mom. I told my ex not to force the reading. The funeral day came, and I showed up for my kids. They were hanging back with me a lot, and they told me their mom kept watching them, which I witnessed myself. For the funeral, I sat behind them since she wouldn't let them sit with me. She told us that all her husband's kids should be seated up front, and I didn't have the heart to tell her they weren't his kids on the day of her husband's funeral, when she was already such a mess. So I bit my tongue and supported my kids. It was after the service when everything went down. The kids came to sit in my car for a while, and we were laughing about something. My ex came over and asked how could they be laughing when they had just buried their stepdad? And why did they show no grief at all over the loss of a man who was a part of their lives for 7 years? She said it was almost like they were glad he was gone. She told them they should have been looking way more somber after he passed. She told them if they really didn't care, that they clearly needed help because her husband loved them. I stepped in and told her to lay off the kids. They were kids. She told me to stop interfering with how she parents our kids. My daughter ended up getting mad at her mom and told her she wasn't sad he was gone. He was a jerk and she had always hoped she would leave him. She stormed off and my son followed. My ex was going crazy, and I yelled at her and told her to cut it out and to stop trying to make our kids perform a grievance routine over her husband. I told her they were trying to support her, and she should be proud of them for that. She started yelling back at me about what a jerk I am, so I walked away. Am I the jerk? I'll be honest, this is really just an unfortunate situation for everyone involved. I feel bad for dad being caught in the middle. I feel bad for mom for having lost her husband, who she did clearly love, despite the fact that he maybe had some faults. And I feel bad for the kids for being a target here. I mean, surely she had some kind of instinct as to how they felt about their stepfather over the years. It had been 7 years. This can't be the first time she's noticing that maybe they weren't the biggest fans of his. But regardless, I agree with our poster here. You can't really expect the kids to put on an act. They're there to support you. They understand that despite how they may have felt about the man, that you still need help right now. And they're there to give it to you. But I can't chew out mom too much. She just lost her husband. I think some time needs to pass and a follow-up conversation needs to happen here. It's just really unfortunate that all of this happened on the day of the funeral. My wife took down our special anniversary painting so she could put up her sister's basic drawing. My wife of 5 years is a huge fan of Calvin and Hobbes. She has been since she was a teenager, and she's 43 now. She and I have had a lot of issues in the past, because she, in the past, before marriage while we were dating, would always prioritize her family, siblings and parents, instead of our relationship. Fast forward a lot of counseling, time, and miles, and here we are. For our anniversary, I bought her a special one-of-a-kind original painting that we kept hung in our bedroom. It's special because it's symbolic of each of us waiting for the time and place that we found each other. We found each other later in life, 36 and 31. Fast forward to tonight. I walk upstairs and see that our painting is laying on one of our dressers. and hung in its place is one of her sister's paintings. She had apparently painted this piece recently so that it could hang in the bedroom of our 10-month-old. A little bit of context, we have 2 kids, a 2.5-year-old and a 10-month-old. My wife had a previous Calvin and Hobbes painting that her sister did, and it hangs in our 2.5-year-old's room, despite me voicing my disapproval. After confronting my wife, she said that she wanted to treat the boys the same, so her sister painted another pic for our youngest son. Am I the jerk for being mad that she took down our painting to display her sister's? My wife claims that she just wanted to remember her young years for a night, and that she was planning on putting the drawing in our son's room in the morning and our painting back up on the wall. I'm furious and told her that again she is picking her family over me. Out of all the possible places to hang this piece, she took down a sentimental piece? WTF? Am I overreacting here? Okay, I understand that the piece is sentimental and everything, but she did say she was just going to take it down for the night and was then going to put it right back up. At that point, it shouldn't have been such a big issue. Now, clearly you've attached a lot of meaning to this picture, and just the act of it even being taken down temporarily has you in a bit of a fuss. I really think you need to take a step back here. The picture will go back up on the wall, and even if it didn't go back up in that specific spot, it can go somewhere else. It still has the same meaning, no matter where it's placed in the house. I'm really getting a lot of insecure vibes from our poster here. You said you guys have been to counseling, but it seems like there maybe still needs to be some progress made here. I'm sure your wife loves you and that painting very much. You can't take something like this personally. My boyfriend refuses to get rid of his teddy bears. So my boyfriend is a great guy, but he has about 7 different teddy bears, all with names. Not from childhood, like recently bought them, between 3 to 5 years ago. He cuddles them and sometimes talks to them. He lives a normal life, makes good money, and the relationship is overall good. It's not even like he ignores me. I just find it really weird and embarrassing. I told him he should grow up and stop being crazy. He started crying and is now in the room talking to the stupid bear again instead of talking it out with me. How does this guy make enough money for a 3-bed house on his own, yet does stupid stuff like this? For the record, we don't live together and completely support ourselves separately. Should I encourage him to get a hobby or something? Am I the jerk for wanting a grown man to stop having teddy bears? As far as I know, nothing happened to make him specifically want a teddy bear. The first one he got because it was a Pokemon thing or whatever, but it just spiraled into more. Okay, this one's a little weird. It kind of sounds like maybe this guy just has them as an outlet. Like maybe this is how he gets his feelings out without having to talk to real people. Almost like a journal. Now, I will say it does seem a little weird that he got so upset so quickly when it was brought up, and that he instead chose to go talk to the bears instead of you. But again, maybe this is just how he's coping with his emotions. Who cares if that's how he needs to let stuff out? There are people that do a lot worse than that to blow off steam. Be thankful he doesn't have a drinking problem or something.
Husband ruins a wedding by offering to tip the bartender with his vape pen, sending him to the hospital. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. Yeah, so this screw up happened the summer before COVID, but I think that statute of limitations are up, so I can tell this story. My wife and I went to her colleague's wedding. I'm not a huge drinker and I didn't really know anyone. So my plan was to grab a cold refreshing beverage, find somewhere to post up, and just nurse it while I got really stoned and did some people watching. Which leads me to my vape pen. On the way to the wedding, I stopped at a dispensary and picked up a reusable vape pen thing. I'm a pretty traditional smoker. I go to the place and buy an eighth and smoke it over the course of the next month or two. I'd never had a pen before. I was just like, I'm going to a wedding and want something that won't make me sleepy or mentally handicapped. And the young woman at the counter handed me this thing. As my wife was driving us over, I tried it out. I also don't smoke very much at one time and have a hard time with anything harsh. When I do smoke these things, they hit way too hard and I cough like crazy and hate myself. So I took a very small puff, noticed it hit really hard, and thought, well, that's because you think everything hits too hard. Next thing you know, we're at the reception and I'm standing in line to grab some drinks from the bartender and notice the tip jar. Realizing I don't have any cash, I'm like, dude, do you have Venmo or something? I know.
Don't even worry about it, man. It's no big deal.
But I'm a service industry vet, so I wanted to find a way to tip him because I know it's going to be a long night and a lot of people won't tip. So I'm like, all right, man, well, if my wife has some cash, I'll double back over. But, in the meantime, if you party, and I show him the pen. He's like, oh, for real? Hell yeah, dude. and proceeds to take an enormous puff on this thing. Within seconds, he was doubling over and coughing uncontrollably. It was incredibly loud. And in under a minute, he was down on his hands and knees behind the bar puking. Still, kind of no harm, no foul, until he gets up and puts all of his weight onto a tumbler glass that was sitting on the table he used to help himself up, cutting his hand open so badly. And then something very interesting happened. Something that had never happened before. I started vomiting at the sight of the blood. So naturally, this is pretty disruptive, and the groom, who just so happened to be nearby, comes over to see what's going on and faints the second he sees this guy's hand. He smashes his head on the table on the way down, his face taking the tablecloth and everything on the table down with him. Totally unmitigated disaster. Both of them had to go to the hospital, and the bride was understandably super upset and screaming at the caterers. So I decided, well, it's been a good life, and began to march over to explain to her what happened, when out of her mouth comes a series of very specific slurs directed at the owner of the catering company. I didn't get a single word out of my mouth before she said, "So sue me," turned on her heel and told people to just round their stuff up and go. Cue major chaos. Everyone is fighting with everyone, and almost all of the guests left. I told my wife what happened on the drive home, and she said I should call the catering company and apologize, which I did. And the owner laughed for about 30 seconds on the phone before saying, "Well, whatever, screw that jerk." So, yeah. Oh, yeah, this just goes from 0 to 100 real quick here. Probably should have given the guy a little bit of a warning before giving him a puff, but other than that, I don't think you really did anything wrong. You were just trying to be friendly, and things just got out of control from there. This literally sounds like a sitcom. I appreciate that you were going to take responsibility for everything that happened, but at the same time, I don't blame you for not doing so once things started to escalate. Also, I don't think you confessing at that point would have really changed the outcome of everything. Maybe just be lucky that you got away with this one without too much attention drawn towards you. My stepkids accuse me of abandoning and traumatizing them because I didn't want to parent them anymore. I met Will when I was 22. Will was 29 with 2 kids and had been newly widowed. We had a whirlwind courtship where he introduced me to the kids and got me involved in their lives very early. First few days after I met him, Will said really quickly he was sure I was the one. Not only to himself, but also for his kids. He said that we'd have an incredible, happy family life together. We got married when I was 23. Will was 30 and his kids were 8 and 6. Our wedding ceremony also included me and the kids making promises to each other, which was Will's idea. Soon, Will shoved all the childcare onto me. I wasn't a stay-at-home spouse. I worked full-time and always have, but he always had reasons for me to do the childcare. Him being sore from doing a physical job, me being better at it since I babysat kids this age in the past and he never had, or girl stuff for his daughter, or cooking, or anything. He always had some reason, and it always ended up on me. He started playing video games and relaxing from getting home until bed, because he was tired, and he was bringing in the money and keeping the roof over everyone's heads. Though that wasn't really true. He said he deserved to relax. Then he went out with his friends or brought them back to drink beer and watch loud TV. He developed a major attitude with me and encouraged the same in the kids. They found it funny. He started openly disrespecting me and encouraged them to also. He was the ultimate fun dad, and I got put in the role of the mean witch. Sometimes they all ganged up on me and mocked me, but also all expected me to serve them and constantly be jumping to take care of them. By the end of the year, I realized the marriage was a big mistake, but felt guilty leaving because of my promises to the kids. Another year went by and I realized that no matter how hard I tried, and how I knew they were only kids and I didn't really blame them, I genuinely hated both of the kids. And I couldn't lie to myself anymore and pretend that I loved them. I didn't, and I never would. One day, I just walked out, packed up everything of mine, and moved out while nobody was at home. I left a note explaining it wasn't working and saying goodbye. That was the end. Cue chaos from my ex and a bitter divorce. But we both walked away with what we went into the marriage with. Not much for either of us. I had never legally adopted the kids, so I had no rights or responsibilities about them, and I never reached out to any of them again. Honestly, I was overjoyed to be rid of all of them. 15 years have gone by, and that seems like a lifetime ago, or another person's life, but I'm still in my 30s. I was recently shocked to get a message from Tamara, Will's daughter, now 25. Tamara said I betrayed and traumatized her for life for abandoning them after my promises to them. She said I had a responsibility to never leave no matter what. I know she remembers the horrible way she treated me though. Am I the jerk here? It doesn't sound like you're the jerk as much as you were the maid. It really sounds like your ex-husband lost his wife and very quickly realized he couldn't handle this situation on his own, or at least didn't want to, and just tried to get someone to come in and take over where his wife left off. It might have been just as bad for her as far as we know, but I think that your former stepdaughter would understand now that she's a little older why you left, rather than holding it against you. I don't know if you've responded to her or not, but maybe you just need to point out exactly how badly you were treated, especially by her father, and what exactly he was expecting of you. It definitely wasn't an equal relationship, and it would be one thing if the kids made you feel wanted, but they never did. So I can't hold anything against you for leaving. I keep messing with my jerk brother every time he gets into a game. So I, 15-year-old male, have an older brother, 18. And he's a massive jerk. I'd rather not get into it on this post, but basically, he thinks I should respect him all the time and treat him like a god. He actually said to my dad once that he should be able to hit me whenever he wants and I shouldn't be able to do anything about it. So thankfully now he doesn't hit me, but we've had conflicts every now and then. So we have a PS4. I mostly play on it, but he plays on it sometimes too. I downloaded this app for PC called Netcut, which lets you control the internet from devices connected to it. So every single time he tried to play, he plays a lot of Modern Warfare, I'd let him play a little bit, then turn his internet off on the PS4. Oh, you're in an intense fight? Whoops, the internet went off. Oh, you're almost about to win? Whoops, internet's gone. Sometimes I'd even call out to him while he's lagging, is the internet working? It makes me smile every time he rages. And I got some justice for all the times he was a jerk. Yeah, he does sound like a jerk, and this is just your small way of torturing him. It really just sounds like typical brother stuff. I can't say I hold anything against you on this one, but I would be careful to make sure he doesn't find out what you're doing. Entitled jerk decides to take my seat on the plane without asking, so I take his gift. My new wife and I recently took a trip to Denver on a United flight. I fly often, but not as often as some other people. When I booked the flight, the plane was fairly empty, so I booked the window and aisle seats in premium economy section right behind first class seats, leaving the middle seat empty. By the time we actually flew, the flight was nearly full, so I checked the seat chart and noticed that someone took the seat between us. No biggie. When we get on the flight, we'll just offer the window or aisle seat to whoever booked the middle seat. Boarding time came and we were in group 2, so the pre-boards in group 1 got to go before us. When it was our turn to board and we got to our seats, there was an older man seated in the window seat. I thought that was kind of a jerk move to just take someone's seat without asking. Obviously, this guy has flown before since he had a pre-boarding status without having young kids, was not disabled, and definitely wasn't in the military. I let it go since we were going to switch seats anyway. Soon after the flight took off, the attendant came up to me with a gift bag and congratulated me for achieving 1K status. The gift bag wasn't for me, it was for the guy that took the window seat without asking. He obviously knew what he was doing and has probably done this before. The guy was looking out the window all through boarding and never turned his head to acknowledge us until the flight attendant came over with the gift bag. I accepted his gift bag and the flight attendant asked if I'd like a complimentary drink as well. Of course I said yes, and even got a free glass of wine for my wife too. I glanced at the guy and could see the anger in his eyes, but he didn't say a thing. Petty win for me over this guy that took my seat that I would have given him, but instead he took it without asking. Serves you right, jerk. I'm really surprised the old man didn't say anything after the flight attendant came over. Someone who's so ready to claim something that's someone else's, you would think would jump at the opportunity to grab something that was actually theirs. But I guess he couldn't do it without looking like a jerk twice. Once for admitting to stealing someone else's seat, and again for now cutting in looking like he's trying to get someone else's gift. But I guess he didn't care that much since he didn't say anything. Worked out well for our poster though. I canceled on our family vacation after my newly widowed mom decided to bring her new boyfriend. My dad lost his year-and-a-half battle with cancer 1 year ago, April 2022, at only 62 years old. He and my mom were married for 31 years. The few months before my dad got sick, he and my mom were not on great terms, and were contemplating divorce. However, through my dad's diagnosis and extreme ups and downs of treatment, they came together, squashed some issues, and my mom was there to take care of my dad every step of the way. I miss him every day. Me and my mom had always been pretty close, but since my dad died, I feel like I'm seeing and talking to her less and less these days. And it makes me sad. In August of 2022, 4 months after my dad passed, my mom started seeing someone. She'd call him her friend, slip in mentions of him in conversation, but I personally wanted nothing to do with him. Still don't. I thought it was too soon, and I told her so. But everyone grieves differently, and dating after losing a spouse is hard. But conversations I've attempted with this guy and the chemistry between them has been super awkward in my opinion. I feel like she's disregarding any feelings or pushback that me, my sister, and extended family have about this relationship. She's now started bringing him to events and parties, and there's an awkward vibe when he's around. Nobody wants to say it out loud. This past week, he showed up unexpectedly at our family's Easter party at my parents' house. My mom knew he was coming and didn't mention it to anyone. Following tradition, we stood in prayer before we ate dinner, and my uncle prayed out loud for those who we have lost. And I felt so awkward that my mom's boyfriend was there, holding hands with my family as we talked about my dad, in my dad's house. Almost only a year to the day that he died. We're now booking flights for a large family vacation in June. Condo has already been booked for months. And my mom casually mentions at Easter that she's bringing her boyfriend. I didn't hear this at the time, and found out later from a cousin. I immediately called and told her my feelings about him going. I don't want him to. And she completely changed the subject and didn't acknowledge what I told her at all. Not to mention, we had decided to leave a day early to save money on flights. But now that her boyfriend is going, it will actually cost me more, because we'll no longer be splitting the cost that we originally planned, since they'll be doing things separately. Money is not a problem though. It's now the principle to me. Of the 20 family members that will be on this trip, not one person really wants him to be there, except her. He will be staying in the same condo, and we're all going to have to tiptoe around this awkward situation for an entire week while we should be relaxing and enjoying family time together. So, am I the jerk for wanting to cancel on the family vacation and stick to my guns about not wanting her boyfriend to go, even though she's already booked his flight? This is always an awkward situation. When someone loses a spouse and seems to very quickly try to replace them, it leaves everyone else around feeling very uncomfortable. I think what might be going on here is your mom is already way ahead of you guys in terms of this relationship. You guys are counting from the day your dad passed. Your mom was probably counting from a long time ago. This is something that she's been wanting for a long time, and now has the freedom to now that your dad's gone, as bad as that is to say. But you said that they were contemplating divorce after a 31-year marriage before he got sick, and that decision doesn't come lightly. I guarantee it's something that she had been thinking about for years. So that's something that you need to keep in mind as well. But at the end of the day, I agree with our poster that this is too soon for her to be bringing him around the rest of the family. At least not this much. I told my brother's fiance she looks anorexic in her wedding dress. I'm a 29-year-old female. My brother, 26, is getting married soon. All the family likes his fiance. We really accepted her as part of the family already, even though they've only been dating for 2 years. They got engaged 4 months ago. She was extremely excited and nervous about the dress in particular. She's kind of like the silly girl who loves weddings and that kind of stuff, so we expected it, to be honest. She asked some friends and close family to go with her to buy the dress. We went to the store and she let each of us pick a dress we wanted her to buy. Most of my family picked big dresses, mainly because she's too thin and we think a tight dress would make her look bad. Everyone in my family is kind of a big size, except for my brother who got into fitness at a young age and a cousin who had anorexia that was so bad she passed away for causes related to it. We've always been worried about my future sister-in-law's health, although she says she's just skinny and she's healthy. Well, she was trying on the dresses and one of her friends had picked up a strapless siren cut dress. It was cute, but it looked bad on her. It made her look like she was sick and unhealthy. I told her I didn't like it because it didn't suit her personality. My family agreed with me, but her friends and family said she looks gorgeous with it. She changed into the next dress and so on. She hasn't bought a dress yet because she wants to think about the options and which one she likes best. Me and her went out to eat yesterday as I'm in charge of her wedding cake. I own a bakery, and we needed to talk about that. We also chatted about other stuff, and at some point she asked me why I was so against some of the dresses she tried on the other day. I told her I just think she looks better with a big dress. It makes her look like a princess. She told me she's thinking of buying a siren cut dress and asked me why does that kind of dress not make her look like a princess? I then told her that, quite honestly, they make her look too thin. She looks sick. She rolled her eyes and asked if it makes her look anorexic. Which I said, yeah, kind of. You look like my cousin in her prom dress. Then she went off on me. She told me I was awful and then left. She told my brother what happened and he called me to tell me off too. Am I the jerk here? She asked me and I answered honestly. So I understand the impulse to want to answer honestly here, especially considering you have a history with issues like this in your family. And at the end of the day, I do feel like you're coming out of a place of concern and not trying to be a jerk. But it's her wedding day, and that's the type of dress that she wants to wear. If this is really a conversation that you wanted to have happen, you could have done it another way. If the conversation were maybe more about how you're concerned about her health or something, she might have taken it a little bit better. But I think you were just a little too cut and dry here. My daughter blasted me and my soon-to-be wife on social media and got herself uninvited from the wedding. I, 37-year-old male, am getting married this fall and have made the choice to not invite my daughter Bella, who's 16, due to circumstances I'll explain now. Before people tell me that we should sit down and talk or do therapy, those options have been exhausted and are no longer viable. Me and my ex-wife Teresa, 38-year-old female, do not have a good relationship. We started dating at 16 and then had Bella at 21. At first, everything was awesome, but then my wife started hanging out with a group of women, just not very good people. I refused to hang out with them. My wife started drinking heavily with this group and going out at night, leaving me with our daughter. I didn't like how she was keeping up our home either, as I worked full-time and she didn't. The final straw was when I was forced to come along bar hopping. Teresa got embarrassingly drunk. She started calling me a loser in front of everyone. This was not the first time she had publicly disrespected me. She had a habit of trying to show off to her friends by belittling me. I filed for divorce the next weekend. The original custody agreement was 50-50, which then changed because I asked for a DNA test on Bella. I had heard rumors and wanted to confirm. My ex blew up and refused to allow a DNA test to be done, solidifying what I had expected. My ex went back and got pretty much full custody because I refused to pay child support without a DNA test. This had been the arrangement for 5 years. I see Bella a few times a month. I do what I can, but I don't have custody, so it's difficult. I'm engaged to one of my best friends, Chrissy, 33-year-old female. We've known each other since college. Bella hates her for no reason. Chrissy wasn't even involved in my life once I got married. Bella for some reason thinks she's terrible. Chrissy has been nothing but nice to Bella. Recently, someone showed me Bella's social media where she blasted us, saying how she had a deadbeat dad. Not true. I paid for her and her mom for 7 years and still give her money whenever I see her, and called Chrissy a slut in the same post. I was planning my invites for our wedding and I did not invite Bella. She doesn't care about us. She called Chrissy a slut and shamed me on social media, lying for attention. I also don't want drama at my wedding. It should be a fun time, not another event for Bella to hijack. My ex-wife found out about the wedding and asked what Bella's role would be. I told her she didn't have one because she isn't invited. I called Bella and gave her my reasoning, as well as telling her that her post on social media played a factor, so she should be more careful what lies she wants to put out there. She tried to apologize and said she would behave at the wedding. I told her that I knew she didn't like Chrissy or me that much. So why would she expect an invite? She called me a jerk and we haven't spoken since. Am I the jerk? It sounds like everyone's being a bit of a jerk in this one. Your ex-wife's behavior while you guys were married was completely unacceptable and I'm 100% behind you on the divorce there. Finding out afterwards that your daughter wasn't yours is just an extra kick to the teeth, so I really do feel bad for you on that one. But that doesn't change the fact that you were her father. Doesn't have to be necessarily by blood. And she's just a kid who made a stupid social media post. You're supposed to be the adult here. Yeah, she was a jerk, but that doesn't mean that you should be a jerk back. She still seems to choose to spend time with you, even though there's no custody agreement. So there has to be some kind of connection there. I just think it's something that maybe you should reconsider. Vindictive mother-in-law steals from me, so I shred her luxury clothes to make a bed for my guinea pig. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I literally found out about this yesterday, and I'm still laughing at my mom's pettiness. My parents have just finished up an incredibly messy divorce. Due to my dad having several mental illnesses that he refuses to get treated for, stealing marital money, being emotionally and financially abusive, cheating, and a plethora of other things. For as bad as he is, his parents, specifically his mother, are worse. The garbage my paternal grandmother has put my mom through could be its own post, or its own novel to be honest, but let me try to provide some context. We're Indian, but my grandparents immigrated to America after marriage and had my sister and I in the USA. My grandma kicked my mom out of the apartment after my mom gave birth to me, threw her passport in her face, and told her to GTFO and go back to India since she thinks she's so smart and independent. Grandma denies it ever happening now. Last year when my grandparents visited, they stole a lot of valuable stuff from the house to make sure it wouldn't go to my mom in the divorce. They also got their green cards so they could officially move here and left behind suitcases full of their clothes. My father and his parents have lived to make my mom miserable for 23 years, and she's finally gotten free. Once the house sells, we can officially go no contact with that whole side of the family. However, we can't do that until the house sells. Now, here comes the pettiness. My mom was cleaning the house for another house showing when she found my grandparents' suitcases full of clothes. She took all of my grandmother's petticoats and tore them up, and we now use them as bedding for my 2 guinea pigs. Anyone who has had guinea pigs know that while they're adorable, they are stinky and love to poop and pee wherever they feel like it. I know it's a tiny revenge, but it makes me so happy to know that my piggies are following amongst that witch's torn petticoats. And when she finally comes back here, she won't have anything to wear. This feels like a nice, very small piece of revenge for all the crap she had to put up with. It's not nearly balancing the scales, but you know what? It helps them feel a little bit better. And I can't blame them for that. It is kind of funny. Absolutely nothing held against her in this one. My boss refuses to listen to my advice and ends up spending over $1,000 on a mechanic. Just for some context, I'm a new supervisor in property maintenance, and the riding lawnmower we have has often broken down. A lot of these problems are from years of not doing preventative maintenance on it, which is something I've started doing recently in order to have the machine working better, for longer, and cutting down on time and mechanics costs. I've been spending almost all my free time researching this mower, so I know what's going wrong when something is wrong, and will be able to tell the difference between a 30-minute $40 repair I can do or a 3-day $600 repair the mechanic needs to do. A few weeks ago, while I was in the middle of starting a maintenance log on the mower, my boss sees me and asks, "Is that thing broken again?" To which I reply, "No, I'm just trying to make sure that it doesn't break down again." This is when he lets me know that what he thinks I'm doing is a waste of time and money because our biggest expense is labor. So he no longer wants me to work on the mower, and instead wants me to take it to the mechanic across the city that charges $110 an hour for labor. The next week, of course, the mower breaks down again. I tell my boss that I think the problem is likely the air filter, and he just tells me to take it to the mechanic. Me and my whole crew spend 45 minutes driving across the city to the mechanic, drop off the mower, and sure enough, they had to replace the air filter. And it took them an entire day. They also told me that they'd looked the whole thing over and found no other issues, and charged us a few $100s. 2 days after getting the mower back from the mechanic, and it began having issues again. I knew it wasn't the air filter, but the fuel filter looked extremely dirty. Once again, I told my boss, and he told me, "Take it to the mechanic." Back we go. I tell the mechanics that the fuel filter looks bad and describe the issues I'm having. They say it's probably the fuel pump module, so they replace that and don't touch the fuel filters. This is another 3 hours of labor they charge us, plus parts, and the problem still isn't fixed. We get the mower back from them, and once again, it breaks down on someone's front lawn. I call the mechanic, he acts confused, then asks us to bring it back for them to work on it more. This time, they keep it for 3 days. I told them something was wrong with the fuel filter, but they insisted it must be the fuel pump, and took the whole fuel system apart just for them to agree with me that the problem was the filter. Essentially, because my boss insisted that whenever there's a problem with the riding mower, we take it to the mechanic, even if I can fix it, it cost us nearly a full week of lost work, plus $1,000 in mechanics costs, when I could have had it back up and running within 2 hours and for under $100. Your employee has put in a lot of time to try and research this machinery so that they can work on it for you, and you're just going to completely disregard that? You would think that most owners would consider that a valuable asset. But of course, our jerk in this story just sees it as a waste of time, and as a result, ends up wasting way more money than what they were trying to save. Next time, just give your employee a chance. It would have been well worth it for you. My bank won't let me withdraw all my funds, so I find a cheeky workaround. I moved from Pennsylvania to Michigan a few years ago, and only go home once a year or so. A few years back, I transferred the vast majority of my bank account to Michigan, but they were giving me a hard time about closing the account, so I withdrew all funds except for $1.31. I haven't touched the account since that time, so 2 years later, I get a notice for inactivity stating that I'll be charged $5 if my account remains inactive for 2 years. I spoke with 3 different people on the phone, but they would not let me close out the account without incurring a fee, and since I'm never moving back to that town, I refuse to pay them or add any money to the account. So I have to interact with the account once every 2 years or pay you $5? Fine, give me 1 cent, please. When I was there in person last month, I withdrew 1 penny from the account, so now it's good for another 2 years. The attendant definitely gave me a weird look, but at this rate, my account will remain open for the next 260 years. Honestly, it's probably more of a pain for the bank to keep your account open than to just let you close it. All this over a petty fee. I don't understand. It's your money. You should be able to withdraw it without any issues. They have no right to hold it hostage unless you pay them. That doesn't sound right at all. I'm sure it is, but it shouldn't be. I told my wife it's embarrassing for her to give our daughter's bus driver cookies. My wife is very shy, but enjoys giving, and is all gung-ho about showing appreciation to workers she assumes aren't appreciated or recognized. She tries to pass these beliefs onto our kids. Because she's too silent to show her appreciation, she does it through gifts, usually baked goods. I've been embarrassed about it in the past. Our oldest rode the bus for the first time. My wife was waiting at the stop with our daughter and had her hand the bus driver a bag of homemade cookies. Then, when she picked her up from the stop in the afternoon, she gave a bag to the afternoon driver. I asked why she did that when she could easily have just said thank you and left it at that. She said the bus drivers work really hard having to comfort all the nervous kids and handling the unbehaved ones while driving. They deserve more than a thanks. I remind her that this has embarrassed me in the past, and I think her behaviors are too extreme. I wouldn't want gifts from someone I don't know. She ignored how I felt. I contacted some people in my life to see if I was just the crazy one here, and most of my friends and my mom agree. My wife's way of showing thanks just makes everyone uncomfortable. Am I the jerk? Your wife's just trying to do something nice. I don't see why that's such a big deal. It shouldn't be embarrassing for you at all. You clearly don't want to be involved in this transaction. I'm sure those bus drivers appreciate it more than you could possibly understand. I'm curious to know what this poster does for a living. It sounds like they've never had a job in the service industry or anything like that. Maybe it would do them some good. Get them a little more humble, you know? My brother's kids destroyed all of my wife's makeup. For Easter, we had a family dinner at my house with my brother, 34, and his kids, 12-year-old female and 14-year-old male, our parents, my wife, 27, my sister, 26, and myself, 30-year-old male. I have the space and means to do so, and it was a really nice get-together, up until my wife went into our bathroom and saw my niece and nephew destroying her makeup in the connected bathroom. They had dug into her eyeshadow palettes with her brushes and poured out her foundations into them, and a bunch of her compacts were in the sink soaked in water. She immediately freaked out, and I rushed to the room when I heard her yelling. When I saw what was happening, I grabbed both of them and marched them into the living room. I told my brother what they did, and that they needed to leave now and that I will speak with him later. He told me I was overreacting, which I responded by telling him to get out of my house. My parents didn't understand until they saw the giant mess the kids had made, and my sister said I was out of line, but she understood. My wife is absolutely devastated, as she got really into makeup during the 2020 lockdown, and even started posting on Instagram and has spent a lot of money on her collection. She's spent over $4,000 on it, and the collection was her pride and joy. She went through what was destroyed, and they ended up destroying $1,500 worth of makeup. Monday afternoon, I messaged my brother and told him he needed to pay my wife back for what his kids destroyed, and sent him the total. My wife even pulled up the cost of each item ruined, and I sent that to him as well. He told me to screw off and that he won't be paying that much, but he's willing to replace one of the pallets. I said that's not enough, and that since his kids destroyed very important items, he needs to replace them or pay the cost for it. He got my dad involved, and he said that it was unreasonable for me to ask for that much from him, but I feel like it's fair. I feel like your brother doesn't really understand the value of what's been taken from you here. I feel like he's maybe writing it off as not a big deal because it was just makeup. But the reality is, there's a scale of how expensive makeup can be. This happened to be very high-end makeup that his kids destroyed, and came to quite a hefty total. If we were to compare this to something like the kids broke the big screen TV in the living room, he would probably feel a lot more obligated to pay for it. Regardless of what the item is, it's the value that's the issue. If it was just a bunch of crummy makeup that totaled up to $50, I'm sure it wouldn't be that big a deal. But it's not the case here. So the brother should absolutely feel responsible for this. I offered to let a friend stay with me while they were having a hard time, and I'm now regretting it. I, 24-year-old female, have been friends with my friend, another 24-year-old female, for 6 years now, since the beginning of uni. I'm not particularly wealthy or comfortable right now. I live in a house share and I can't wait to have my own place and stability, and can't really rely on anyone but myself to get me there. My friend went back to her parents' place over 6,000 miles away after graduation, and spent about a year there living low-key, applying to jobs and planning her move back to the UK. She bagged a fantastically paid job that she was gushing about in a major city, and found a beautiful apartment with a down-to-earth friend from school. She hasn't always had much stability, so I was ecstatic and super proud to see the situation she created for herself. Needless to say, she was doing much better than me financially. 3 months later, she calls me to tell me she quit her job overnight without a plan as she was overworked. All overtime was entirely her decision, and she said she could see her job would soon become outsourced and she'd be let go anyway. She said she was looking for other jobs that wouldn't be so taxing. I told her, if you end up getting into a desperate situation, you can stay with me until you figure it out. Unfortunately, she jumped onto this and said she wanted to leave her apartment because it was too expensive, and wanted to move to a more social house share. Fast forward 6 weeks. She came over to stay with me for Easter weekend. She told me that she hasn't applied to any jobs, informed her landlord she is leaving assuming she will stay with me until she figures things out, and doesn't have any places to live lined up or tenants to sublet her apartment. She said that she has £50 to her name and her family have no idea of her situation. During the weekend, she ran out of money and they sent her more, while I heard her lying on the phone to them about her job progress. She also said she's done nothing but drink and get high since she quit, and has spent thousands of pounds on this. The weekend went awfully for me. Her behavior was very jarring. She wouldn't let me sleep, wanted to drink all the time despite me not wanting to, and wasn't interested in non-debauched activities. I became fed up of her behavior after she mortally embarrassed me on a night out by acting like a complete fool. I was exhausted when she left, and I don't want her to stay again soon if this is how it'll be. Before she came, I was happy to host her for up to 2 weeks. Now, I don't want to at all. However, she's now relying on staying with me after she vacates the property this Saturday, as she told her landlord she will. She doesn't have the money to pay another month's rent. However, she acknowledged that her family, who are very wealthy, could bail her out if she needed. She also has family in the city she lives in. Of course, I love and care about her, and I don't want her to be in a crappy situation, but she created this for herself. Would I be the jerk for saying she can't stay with me given the circumstance? It sounds like our original poster's friend has made a bit of a lifestyle change here. I'm sure that's something that she acknowledges herself. At this point in time, right now, your guys' lives are very different from each other's, and maybe it wouldn't be the best option for her to stay there for any extended amount of time. Also, it doesn't seem like she has any plans on trying to get back on her feet anytime soon, so maybe she should just make that call to her parents. Yes, it's gonna be awkward, but if this is what you're gonna be doing, then it's gonna have to happen. It's not on your friend to financially support you and give you a couch to crash on while you're doing all this stuff. I don't think our poster's the jerk, especially if the friend has another option. My son's stepdad made a comment about me not being his real dad, so I'm limiting the amount of time they spend together. I was in my late 30s and wanted a family of my own, and got married to someone in her mid-20s. Our marriage quickly deteriorated, and she actually cheated on me and got pregnant. We came to an agreement that I would get sole custody. She would be absolved of any financial obligation and could resume her life. I've been a single parent ever since. Cameron is now 7, and his mom remarried to Steven. They have a 2-year-old son. Last year, me and my ex discussed Cameron having a relationship with her, his half-brother, and Steven, even though they live in another state. They've flown down a few times to spend the day with Cameron. On Easter weekend, they came down to take him to an Easter event. I guess at some point they went swimming, and Cameron decided he wanted to go commando in his jeans afterwards. At the Easter event, he climbed a tree and had a zipper accident. It didn't even bother him until later that night. He was way too embarrassed to tell his mom, so he told Steven. Steven put Curoxin on his cut. When they dropped him off the next day and I was giving him a bath, he told me he got an ouchie and Steven put medicine on it. I didn't think anything weird happened, but what bugged me was that Steven didn't tell me. I did call him and said that he really should have called me the minute he found out, or at least when he dropped him off. He told me to get over it, and Cameron was in pain all evening and waited until he had a private moment to tell Steven about it. It wasn't a big deal. I said, "No offense, you're not the dad." He said, "Well, neither are you. Cameron isn't even my biological son, and he thinks it was weird that I convinced his wife to give up custody. So now I'm limiting contact with them." They were going to come down on Memorial Day weekend and take him to an amusement park, but I'm no longer comfortable with it. My son couldn't care less. So what if he doesn't come home with a stuffed animal? Yeah, that's a pretty jerk comment to make. If stepdad really wants to have this conversation, he should be having it with his wife. She's the one that has agreed to sole custody. She had every opportunity to be a part of her son's life, and is only choosing now to try. How are you going to sit there and judge someone who took in a kid that wasn't even theirs, raised them, and has been a good father to them? You really need to take a step back and look at who's the jerk on this one. I refused to pay for cupcakes for my gender reveal after the baker ruined them. I, 22-year-old female, found out last week my first baby's gender, and it's a little girl. My family are excited that I decided to do a small gender reveal over the Easter weekend. I had this planned for Saturday, so a few days before, I asked a small local business if she could please make 12 cupcakes with pink and blue icing on top and pink icing in the middle. She agreed and said they would be ready to collect Friday evening. The plan was to pick up the cakes on Friday, invite friends and family over Saturday, and give some guests a cupcake, which would reveal the gender. I only invited a few guests, as my apartment is fairly small and I don't want a large gender reveal anyway. Just something cute and fun. Plus, everyone loves cupcakes. So Friday evening came, and the small business owner, Claire, gave me her address to collect the cakes from. Said they would cost £25 and that they were ready to collect whenever. I drove to her apartment and knocked on the door. She greeted me there with the box of cupcakes, and they looked amazing. They were exactly how I imagined them and thanked her for them. She gave me the box, but just as she did, her large pet dog came running up to me, barking, and jumped at me, knocking the box of cupcakes all over the floor. Claire apologized and shut the dog inside. He was still barking and jumping at the door. She said it's because he gets excited when people come and visit, but he wouldn't have hurt me and he's friendly. At this point, I didn't know the damage to the cupcakes as the box had landed upside down. I picked it up and the cakes were ruined. The icing had smashed all over the box and some cakes had spilled out onto the ground. Claire looked horrified. As I understand, she spent a few hours making them for me. She apologized and said she could remake them for free, but they wouldn't be ready until Sunday. I said, unfortunately, I'm expecting my guests tomorrow, and Sunday is no good, as I already had other plans. I explained I wouldn't be paying for these cupcakes as they were inedible and ruined by her dog. We agreed to payment upon receiving the goods, and since I never received them, I wouldn't be paying. She said that I should still pay as she had to buy ingredients for the cakes and the cost of eggs has gone up, meaning she would be out of pocket. I said if she had control of her dog, then they wouldn't have been dropped, and I'm sorry, but again, I wouldn't be paying. I got in my car and left without the cupcakes. I still had guests attend on Saturday. I announced the gender in person rather than with some cupcakes, but it was still nice spending time with my friends and family. My family were all happy, but my sister-in-law said I should still have paid for the cupcakes as she accepted it was her fault and offered to remake them for me. I personally don't think I should have had to pay for them, but now I'm feeling slightly guilty, as I understand it's a small business, and a loss of profit would affect her a lot harder than a larger business. Am I the jerk? So this one I don't feel is 100% black and white, but I'm gonna have to say no, you're not a jerk. You're not expected to pay for them. If this is a business that she's running, she would have to understand that sometimes things like this happen, and this is a part of it. You can't put that on your customer. You can't give your customer that experience. That's great that she offered to remake them, but at the end of the day, that's not good enough for you. You needed them for tomorrow. To expect you to pay at that point is really not right. If you made the gesture to pay, that's a different story. As one of your family members stated, it is a small business and she is taking a loss on this. But it's not your problem. The only alternative is you're taking a loss on it, which isn't fair either because you're not responsible for what happened. Ultimately, I don't think there were really any jerks involved here, but I understand the situation from both sides. My dad borrows my car, sells it behind my back, and keeps the money. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. This was a long time ago. I hardly have any contact with that part of the family anymore, but I do still talk to my dad once in a while. My dad needed a car for a while, so I loaned him mine. When I went to get the car back, the back end was smashed in. My dad tells me how he was at a red light and the car was rear-ended. Of course, I asked the normal questions about fault and insurance and everything else. He tells me the other guy's insurance company sent him a check for the damages, but it wasn't enough to cover the repairs. A lie. So he didn't have the car repaired. Instead, he spent the money. My dad and I have the same first and last name, but a different middle name, so it's easy to see how he could claim the car was his and have the check written to him. When I told my dad that he should have just let me know about the accident and let me handle the claim, he says, "Why should you get anything? You weren't in an accident, I was." We had an argument about this, but none of my dad's argument was even anywhere close to being valid. He also just wasn't hearing any of what I had to say. I asked my dad to leave the car at his house for a few days and said I would arrange to have it picked up and repaired. A couple days later, I went to his house, but I didn't see the car, so I thought he wasn't home. When I knocked, he answered. My younger brother was also there, which was surprising because he was supposed to be away at college, which I was helping pay for, but that's another story. I told my dad I was there to pick up the car. He says that was impossible because he sold it. I asked him why he did that. He says, "You seem so pissed off about the damage, I figured you'd just want me to go ahead and sell it so you didn't have to deal with it anymore." I was making payments on the car and asked my dad how he could have sold it without the title. He told me he just had a guy fill out a lost title form or something like that. I don't even know the details on it. I told him that I thought that was going to be a problem when the guy tries to register the car and finds out there's a lien on the car. My dad says, "That's the buyer's problem, not mine." When I asked him how much he got for it, he told me he got $3,000. Even with the damage, it was worth closer to $7,000, but definitely no less than $5,000. I asked my dad for the money. He told me he already spent it. Then he goes into this rant about how many bills he has and how he's even paying for my brother's college, which is not true. Plus, my brother was sitting right there. He dropped out, but didn't tell me. even though he kept cashing the checks I sent. I had very little contact with my parents after that, and I think I only actually saw them one time since then, which was around the time I got married, but not at the wedding because they refused to go. None of this was all that surprising though. I never should have even loaned the car to my dad in the first place. I know what a jerk he is. Jerk or not, that's an extreme move. Like, you have to understand when you do something that big, like, that's relationship ending. How can there be any trust after something like this? Your dad, and your brother as well, by the way, just seem like skeevy, money-hungry people. Sounds like they're really just trying to get whatever they can out of you. It seems like it's their own fault they're in the situation they're in, and their attitudes don't lead me to believe they're any better of a person. Honestly, I just feel bad for our original poster here, and I'm glad they've gone non-contact with this side of the family, because it sounds like they would have brought you nothing but problems. Entitled Karen behind me in the drive-thru will not stop blaring her horn. When I get to the window, I'm offered to pay for her order. Let me think about that. So this morning, I had to take my puppy to the vet. Nothing serious, just time for his next booster shot. On the way to his vet appointment, I decided to stop for coffee. I'm not a huge Starbucks fan, but the drive-thru is nice with my puppy in the car, so I decided to go there. The line was super long and out the entrance a bit. Your typical Karen driving a Ford Explorer packed with kids pulls up behind me and immediately lays on the horn. There's nowhere for me to go because the line is just crazy long. So I don't move. Karen then decides that every time the guy in front of me rolls even an inch, she's going to immediately lay on the horn. This goes on for the entire line, all the way up to the window. I finally get to the window and go to pay, but the girl excitedly tells me that the guy in front of me paid for my coffee. In fact, they have a streak now of the past 8 people paying for the person behind them. Would I like to pay for the person behind me? I took my coffee and told the girl, that's really nice of them, but I'm not paying for the lady behind me. She's been a jerk this whole line, and I drove away. I'm surprised the person at the window even bothered to ask if you wanted to pay for them. Surely they've heard them honking the entire line. Why would you go out of your way for someone like that? You should have just paid for the car behind the Karen. I'm sure the people at the window would understand and maybe just not count her in their streak. Or alternatively, you pay for her order and take it too. My manager refused to pay for meals while I was on my work trip unless they came from the hotel restaurant. Too bad he didn't check the prices first. A long time ago in the late 90s when I was a young IT consultant, I was sent out of state for an assignment. The sales manager decided to make all of the travel arrangements for me and my coworker. We were to stay at a Holiday Inn type hotel he booked for us. When I asked about daily expenses and a rental car, the sales manager told me that the hotel had a shuttle that would take us to the work site, and we could eat at the hotel restaurant. I tried to argue with him that I'd like to see the town or eat somewhere other than the hotel, but he wouldn't budge. He paid for the flights and the rooms, and we could charge our meals to the room. Anything else would be paid for out of our own pockets. I was young and broke, so I didn't have much of a choice. I settled into the expectation that I would have a boring week of hotel, work, hotel for 5 days. When my coworker and I arrived at the hotel, we were quite surprised to find that it wasn't at all a Holiday Inn type hotel, in spite of the fact that it had inn in the name. It was quite fancy, and the rooms were comfortable and spacious. The hotel restaurant, though, was something my lower middle class self had never experienced. This was a restaurant that didn't print prices on the menu. In fact, I couldn't even pronounce half of the items listed. Meals were a set cost regardless of what you ordered. Breakfast was $40 per person. Lunches and dinners were $60 per person. Knowing we had no car and no way to expense anything that wasn't charged to the room, my coworker and I dutifully ate 3 meals a day in the hotel restaurant. I had 5 days of filet mignon for breakfast and various gourmet lunches and dinners while the hotel shuttle took us to and from the workplace all week. Now, years later, I'm not even sure I remember the city I was in or the work I was doing, but I remember a week of filet mignon for breakfast and the look in the eyes of the sales manager when he saw his credit card statement. That was a great trip. It's always funny how managers try to save money sometimes and just end up spending way more. Being flexible can work for both of you, you know. It doesn't just always have to go in the employee's favor. Being a little flexible here would have saved him a lot of money. But hey, our original poster got to live it up for a week. At least food-wise. I would have no complaints with filet mignon for breakfast every day. I refuse to pass down my engagement ring to my future daughter-in-law. My son Sam, 26, and his longtime girlfriend, now fiancée, Emily, also 26, finally decided to get married. They had announced their engagement privately to my husband and me, and after the initial excitement, they said they had something important to talk to me about. Sam wanted my engagement ring to give to Emily. Sam said this would be a great way to keep him from starting his marriage in debt from having to buy a new expensive diamond ring. Emily also added that she's liked the look of my ring a lot and would love for me to pass it down to her. I love my engagement ring. I've worn it every day since my husband proposed to me with it, and to be honest, I still have plenty of years to live that I want to keep wearing it until I'm old and gray. Also, my ring is not a family heirloom. My husband chose and bought this ring for me many years ago, so I told them that I appreciated them wanting my ring, but no, I wanted to keep it. I listed out the reasons above and how I don't want to part with my ring yet for the rest of my still long life. However, when I'm old, I'd be more than happy to give it to their future children. Well, Sam and Emily weren't happy with my answer, and Sam actually called me selfish and materialistic. He said that diamonds are a scam and asked how could I let him go into debt to buy a new ring. Emily was disappointed and said that she had hoped that my ring could become a family heirloom, and it would be a token of accepting her into our family. I've always liked Emily and we get along great. They also said that I could keep my wedding band, so it wasn't like they were leaving me without any rings to wear. So, am I the jerk here? That's a pretty bold ask, especially when your mother's not that old. It's understandable that she wouldn't be ready to give it up. And with all due respect, if you can't afford a ring, then you probably can't afford a wedding either. And why are you getting married? Sounds like maybe you're kind of rushing into this just because you guys have been in a relationship for a long time, but you're not actually in a financial place to get married right now. Don't shirk that onto your mom because she doesn't want to give you her ring. That's a pretty crappy thing to do. My brother's kids flushed my $30,000 engagement ring down the toilet, and now he refuses to pay for it. I hosted a family dinner over the weekend. My brother brought my nephews, 4 and 8, over as well. I used to wear my engagement ring all the time, but lately I keep it in my walk-in closet and mainly wear it for special occasions. While I was cleaning up the dinner table, my nephews went to go play while the adults were still in the outdoor patio/outdoor kitchen area. My brother was not supervising his kids. During this time, my nephews went into the master bedroom without anyone knowing and started playing with everything, including my engagement ring. When we came to look for them, they panicked because they knew they weren't supposed to be upstairs, ran into the master bathroom, and flushed my ring. We called a plumber in case it was somehow in the U-trap of the toilet and not actually gone. But no, unfortunately, it was gone for good. We still had the original receipt, so I called my brother. I emailed him a scanned copy as proof of the cost, and asked him to reimburse me for the ring my nephew flushed. He immediately started calling me a jerk because we were family and he was just a child, and he's refused to pay the cost of my ring. I told him I'll be taking him to court for this, and now my entire family is blowing up my phone saying families shouldn't sue each other and just let it go. The ring was unfortunately not insured. I found out the day after my nephew flushed it. My husband says he forgot and in the end never actually insured it. My brother says he doesn't have the money to repay even $100 per month and has refused any kind of repayment plan. He said, I live in a nice enough house and if I want a replacement I should just sell my car. To this day, he hasn't truly apologized. It was a Canadian sorry. Sorry, not sorry. He said kids will do what is normal for kids, and they shouldn't be held responsible for a ring. They were supposed to supervise their kids outdoors with the rest of the family while I was busy cleaning up. I don't believe for a second my brother and his wife can't pay for the cost of my engagement ring. They don't make anything near my husband, but they have a combined income of around $250K. They don't pay rent or anything because my parents gifted them their old house valued at $3.5 million in Toronto. There's no mortgage on the home my brother lives in. The only things my brother and his wife will have to pay for is the cost of raising their children, normal bills, and food. I feel so distraught because my ring holds great sentimental value to me. I've already been speaking with my husband's family lawyer, but at this point, I'm ready to hire a PI to find out if they really don't have the money. Am I the one being a jerk? Eesh, that's a lot of money. I can understand why your brother might be a little hesitant to offer to pay that back right away. But you're right, it does sound like they're rather comfortable in their current situation, and it shouldn't be that much of an issue for them to pay for it. It was a very sentimental, very valuable thing that his children lost of yours. It's not fair that you should have to sell your car to buy a new one. That's a really jerk comeback. If this were a situation where your brother wasn't as well off, I would say, yeah, maybe you're being a bit of a jerk wanting him to pay for this. But it sounds like he can and he's choosing not to. So I'm gonna have to side with our original poster on this one. Brother needs to pay up. I decided to wait a little while before letting my boyfriend know that I do in fact speak his language. My boyfriend Jake, male 29, and I, female 27, have been seeing each other for a few months now. Dave is Mexican American, but he's currently working in Berlin where I'm from. I've heard him speak Spanish on the phone many times and inquired about this, but he's never asked me if I speak it, and it just felt weird to mention it when he didn't seem to care enough to ask if I spoke any other languages apart from German and English. Because of that, he's never really found out I speak Spanish, despite me quite literally watching a telenova before bed quite a few times. It kind of stings, but it is what it is. I never eavesdropped on his conversations though. His friend from the US was visiting him and I was meant to join them for dinner. When I did, they were speaking in Spanish, and his friend asked in Spanish if I speak it or if they should switch to English only. My boyfriend said, again in Spanish, "Nah, she's a gringa, she doesn't speak it," which kind of annoyed me because he never even asked. So I replied to his friend in Spanish that I do in fact speak it. Jake got so angry and red. He didn't say anything in front of his friend, but on the way home, after dropping his friend off at the hotel, he started shouting about how I humiliated him and that I'm the jerk for hiding it. I told him it's best if he went to his flat and we would talk when he calms down. He hasn't changed his mind and still thinks I'm the jerk and I should apologize. I told my friends and they're split on it, and I'm not sure anymore. Am I the jerk for not telling him? This one's a little bit of a weird one. I feel like it should have come up at some point. Like, yeah, he didn't ask explicitly, but you would think that you'd be happy to show that you speak Spanish. Like, something would come up and you would just say it in Spanish, and he'd be nicely surprised. But you did kind of pick a bad moment to reveal it, and it was ultimately a little embarrassing for him. Mind you, that is his own fault. He was being rather ignorant about it, so I don't blame you. It's hard for me to really say you're a jerk in this situation. Definitely sounds like your boyfriend was being a jerk though. My girlfriend seems to think her fan fiction is actual writing. My girlfriend, Abby, 31, and I, male 33, have been together for a few months, and this Easter I was going to introduce her to my family. We haven't moved in together yet. Abby is quite smart. She has a PhD and works in her field. I only have a BA, so you can imagine my surprise when a hot and smart woman wanted to date me. Anyway, I digress. Abby's passion is writing, although she's never allowed me to read anything she's wrote. She dreams of writing a book and says she's practicing and trying to draft things. One day I was staying over and fell asleep and she went to her office to write. When I woke up, I peered over her shoulder when she was writing and saw names that sounded familiar. I asked her about this and sure enough, she admitted to writing fanfiction. Apparently, she's already written fanfiction and is working on her third one. She says it's writing practice and she loves it. I told her it's cringy, and if she was serious about her book, she'd have it written by now because she's pretty much already written 2 books. Only they were fanfiction. She got silent and told me to leave her alone. When I introduced her to my family, I mentioned that she has a PhD. My brother and sister got impressed and asked about it. Abby tried to tell them, but I interjected and told them to be not so impressed because she wastes her time writing silly fanfiction. So I don't know how she even got her doctorate. It was meant to be a joke, but Abby was angry. She called me a jerk, and she wouldn't talk to me for the rest of the day and asked me to drive her home. I tried to come in, but she told me she wanted to be alone and write her fanfiction. I told her she was being childish, but left anyway. I haven't heard back from her since then, and I told my sister, and my sister agreed with Abby. I tried to call Abby, but she texted me with jerk and nothing else. My sister thinks I owe Abby an apology, but I don't think I did anything wrong, and yet Abby is annoyed. Was I really the jerk here? Yes, 100%, hands down, yes. Normally I go back and forth and try and give you a little bit of benefit of the doubt, but you put your nail in the coffin when you decided to make your joke. It wasn't a joke. You were making a stab at it. It's something that she cares about and that you're diminishing. She said that she's just doing this for practice and not for real writing. I get that in your mind she should be writing her own book, but it's not that easy. You have to come up with characters, a backstory, and all kinds of things. At least with a fan fiction, she has something to get the ball rolling and can just let her creative juices flow without having to do all that background work first before she can even get started. You were 100% a jerk here. I knew I would have to babysit my siblings, so I purposely made plans to avoid it. I'm a 17-year-old female. I have 9 siblings, all 12 and under. My parents use me as their babysitter, but they do pay me. They only need one person because the older ones can kind of care for themselves as well, so really, I'm looking after 6 kids. On average, I'm babysitting all 9 about 13 to 15 hours weekly, sometimes more often with less kids. I know it's hard to get babysitters for that many children, so I'm usually glad to help out, but lately it seems my mom always wants me to watch 3 or 4 for whatever reason, and I have almost no free time besides sports and homework. I've tried talking to my mom about it and she's promised to tone it down, but I don't really see a difference. When I brought it up again, she said she's trying, so I feel kinda bad for not wanting to. My mom and dad had planned a night out for, quote, some much needed alone time on Friday, from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. Obviously, they wanted me to babysit. They told me on Monday their plans, but I do not want to babysit for 9 hours straight, and I told them I'd have to get back to them. I texted my friend if I could have a sleepover Friday, and she said yes. I went back to my parents and told them I had plans and they'd have to hire babysitters. They thought I had made those plans before they told me, so they said okay and hired a couple. Today, they did a surprise look-through of my phone and found out that I'd made those plans after they told me. So they got mad at me for being so unwilling to help. They seemed so disappointed in me that I now feel like a jerk, because after all, I did lie and tried to get out of helping them. But still, I need a break, and I knew they wouldn't listen. So, am I the jerk? It really sounds like your parents are putting way too much on you here. I get that they need their alone time, but it sounds like they're getting a lot of it considering how much you have to do babysitting. You're a 17-year-old girl. You should be going out and having fun with your friends and doing things and socializing. They can't expect you to always just be available to babysit, and it's understandable that you're gonna want a break once in a while. They're supposed to be the adults here. They need to act like it and let you be a kid. Surely they can handle one more night of responsibility. But kudos to our original poster for being such a great kid, honestly. There aren't many 17-year-olds that would be so cool about this. You genuinely sound like you do want to help out and you care about your siblings. So I can't hold it against you for wanting a night to yourself. Definitely not labeling you with jerk on this one. To me, you just sound like a normal kid. A coworker keeps stealing my lunch, so I swap my lunch with the boss's lunch to catch him. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. Nobody likes a lunch thief, and I had one of the most aggressive at my office. There were rumors for a few months leading up to the inciting incident of someone going around and taking people's lunches. Just about every day someone different would complain that their lunch was missing. It even happened to me once or twice. But I figured, hey, it's a big office, a few people are probably just careless and grabbed the wrong lunch, and are too embarrassed to bring it back. Or someone else packs their lunch and they don't know what's in there, so it's not obvious they have the wrong one. Or something like that. Most people just brought brown bags with their names on it anyways, or identical Rubbermaid Tupperware with a little piece of labeled tape on the side. It was easy enough to mix up. I had accidentally grabbed a wrong lunch once or twice, but I'd noticed before I got it open. I thought I was just more careful, or even just not as busy as some other people in the building. However, other people weren't as forgiving, and Decorum made complaints to HR. They were blown off. Personally, at the time, I thought it was all much ado about nothing. But then it began. My wife enrolled in a French cooking class online, and just about every day I was bringing in fancy gourmet leftovers in for lunch. You'd think I was picking up a go bag from a Michelin-starred bistro on the way in each morning. She really threw herself into the coursework. There were no problems for about 2 weeks, maybe 3, until one day my lunch went missing. Considering what delicacies I had to look forward to, I was pretty miffed. But I did a once-over around the break room and didn't see anyone eating my lunch, so figured someone grabbed my bag by accident earlier. Saw how good things looked and, realizing it was their lucky day, didn't bring it back to the fridge. I wrote the mysterious stranger off as a jerk, but accepted the loss and looked forward to dinner that night instead. Next day, I write my name on my lunch in extra bold lettering, jam the bag into the back of the fridge, and feel peace of mind. I get there come break time, and nope, it's gone. I was pretty upset, but I figured it was a stroke of bad luck and left it at that. What else could I do? However, third day, out of an abundance of caution, I kept my lunch at my desk. A pain because I had to eat it fairly early in the day to avoid spoilage, but at least I'd know where it was. I got up to take care of some business down the hall, and when I came back, yeah, my lunch was gone. Unfortunately, that didn't help me narrow it down much at all, because my desk is centrally located, so everyone's constantly passing by. At that point, there was no possibility of theft being arbitrary, so I approached HR and filed a complaint. Their response, practically verbatim, was, "Employees' lunches are their personal property, and the company is not responsible for lost or stolen personal items." The following day, my wife packed a cream-based soup that really had to be refrigerated. I was passing by the break room to check my lunch practically every 5 minutes. Somehow, it still managed to disappear. I was irate at this point and returned to HR and really blew my top. The best they could do was send a memo around about remembering to check the name on your lunch when you remove it from the fridge. But they made it very clear that it was a routine memo and in no way related to my complaints, which were not in their jurisdiction. So not an admission of responsibility, because my lunch was my own personal problem. The only suitable alternative to packing a lunch available in the building are these wretched shrink-wrapped ham and cheese sandwiches from a vending machine. They've been marinating in the heat for God knows how long, and the bread is as stale as corkboard, and the meat is rancid, and there's gluey mayo smushed into the center. It's a relic of the old office tenants, I'm pretty sure. I vented daily to my wife, but her only idea was to start bringing a regular sandwich and apple again to dissuade the thief and get him to move on to other lunches. So, determined to prevent this low-life scum from downgrading the quality of my lunch, I hatched an elaborate plan. Then the pandemic hit, and I forgot all about this whole saga. I worked remotely for months and months. Then, when we returned, and after all that had happened globally, this was the last thing on my mind. But I got to the break room the first day back, frustrated from having to wear a button-up and tie after months of working in pajamas, sore from my desk chair, and exhausted from small talk, only to find my lunch was gone. This was a particularly sore point because my wife and I divorced between my last lunch at work and the present one. So I did not anticipate being reminded of any past threads involving her. I pretty much flew into a blind rage at that point, especially seeing that stupid, worthless memo about checking the lunch bag names posted in the break room. Feeling so helpless and so hungry and so alone, as it was me and my lunch against the world. I stormed out and was determined to return the next day with a plan. So I came in the following day with an empty lunch bag, and I checked closely to be sure no one was watching. And I switched the contents of the HR person's lunch bag into my bag. So now their lunch appeared to be my lunch. They packed a regular brown bag. So I just discarded that and I left and I waited. I knew this was a pretty big gamble because it was contingent on the theory that the thief was avoiding me while having lunch, but not wary of anyone else. So would eat it out in the open if there was no risk of bumping into me. So I made a big show of going around the office announcing that I was heading out for a meeting and I wouldn't be back until at least 3. I even went to the trouble of moving my car out of the lot to a space 2 streets over, where I then sat in my car and worked remotely for several hours, before sneaking back into the building up the back stairway. I then sat in the stairwell just outside the break room, where you can hear chatter but can't be seen, and after about 20 to 30 minutes of waiting, I heard it. The sweetest sound I'll ever hear in the office. "What the heck, Kyle? That's my lunch." "Nah, it's not your name on the bag." "Give me that." I'm assuming they grab the bag and see my name. "Yeah, let's head to my office for a chat." The HR rep later called me in as well and said they were aware of my break room hijinks, but it was obvious that the point still came across loud and clear. They warned me that it was a violation of policy to move another employee's lunch. It took every ounce of self-control for me to keep from retorting, "I thought our lunches were our personal property and the company was not responsible for them being lost or stolen." They informed me they located the thief and things would be handled accordingly. But better than whatever write-up they might have been able to issue Kyle, his reveal as the lunch thief occurred in front of the whole break room. So word quickly spread as to who had been stealing everyone's lunches earlier last year, and he's now the office pariah. He was in line for a promotion. The promotion is indefinitely off the table, and I also earned some brownie points for exposing him. At the end of the day though, I didn't do this for credit, or even the sweet revenge. I did it to get my lunches back. I'm just hungry, you jerk. I've never worked in an office building or anything where this might actually be an issue. I've always worked retail my whole life where, yeah, we have a break room with normally a tiny little fridge, but we always respected each other's food, as far as I know. Never had a situation where someone would go stealing someone else's lunch. Yet this seems to be a common thread. Is this something that happens all the time in office buildings? Why do the people in office buildings have a lower standard of morality when it comes to lunches? But seriously though, it really is a jerk move. Someone's put a decent amount of time into making themselves that lunch, or in the case of our original poster, his now ex-wife. She was taking cooking classes and making very nice lunches for him. I would be upset too if they kept going missing on a regular basis. Like seriously, Kyle, just bring your own lunch. It's not that hard, dude. Entitled mother demanded my plane seat on my redeployment from Iraq. This happened in 2006. I was in the US Air Force and deployed individually to Iraq, not with a unit. At the end of my rotation, I also took the rotator back by myself. It was a commercial 747. The military paid to take a bunch of us to the US. Back then, we'd typically wear our uniforms, even on commercial flights. The guy in the seat next to me was similarly redeploying and also in his uniform. This was usually never a problem, because Americans were typically very kind to servicemen in their uniforms in public. We had a layover in Ramstein, Germany, and civilians began boarding. These were mostly wives, children, and other dependents of those deployed to Europe. It had to be obvious those of us already on the plane were coming back from deployment. We were in desert-patterned camo, glassy-eyed from mental and physical fatigue, and generally stunk of burn pit. Well, this woman with a baby comes right up to my seat and announces that we're in her seats, and the other guy needs to move too because she wants to put her kid there. We were both kind of bleary and just stared at her in surprise. I didn't care where I sat, but the stewardess hurries over and says the flight is full and they can't reseat us. The woman shoves her ticket in the stewardess's face and says it clearly shows my seat number on her ticket. She wants to kick me and my seatmate off the flight. Clearly she was more entitled to it than us. She flips her lid right in the middle of the plane and goes off on the stewardess. I stayed seated more out of shock than stubbornness. I'd been awake for longer than I cared to think about at that point, and I was not reacting quickly to anything. I guess my seatmate was in the same boat, because neither of us said a single word to her or moved a muscle at all. We just watched her make a jerk of herself in front of all these gawking passengers. She ended up getting herself kicked off the flight. In all, it happened rather quickly, but it still stunned me. The trip from Iraq to my home station was already going to be several days long, and she thought nothing of forcing me and that other guy off just for her convenience. Just one of those jerk moments I think about from time to time. I feel like this might be one of those situations where maybe this woman had something else that was making her angry this day. We all know it can be rough trying to get through an airport, and this woman was doing it with the baby. We can only imagine how this was going for her up till this point. And then to get onto the plane finally and find out that someone else is in your seat, yeah, I can understand why she got upset. And I have a feeling that this was maybe just the straw that broke the camel's back for this woman's psyche. I would like to think that maybe she wasn't really thinking about the situation and what she was doing. Not trying to defend her or anything, because at the end of the day, her actions weren't acceptable. But I do think sometimes we need to take a look at other people and understand that they're living their own lives. And yeah, most normal people don't react this way. There has to be a reason why she's so upset, and I doubt it's with you for being in the seat that she was supposed to have. My neighbors would not stop partying every night, so when I had to move as a result, I at least made sure they wouldn't be able to do it anymore. I bought a house 4 years ago in a quiet neighborhood. I had wanted to get into that neighborhood for years. My best friend lives there. It was a couple blocks from my kid's school. It was a good neighborhood. Then COVID hit. My neighbors across the street were forced to move at the beginning of the pandemic before the eviction moratorium was in place. They were really good neighbors. We were friendly with each other and we were sad to see them go. So when the property owner rented to a new family, we were hoping we could cultivate a friendly relationship. Unfortunately, that was not the case. About a month after they moved in, the lockdown started. And that's when things went from 0 to 100 real quick. For the next year, every night there was a huge party. Cars down the street, music so loud you could hear it over regular house noise in every room in my house. My friend in the next cul-de-sac would text me regularly if the music he was hearing was my neighbor's. We tried to be civil. I asked politely. I brought them beer, I offered some killer 420. Eventually, they threatened me and my wife. So we started calling the police. Almost every night for 4 months. We organized with the neighbors, and they started calling the police as well. Eventually, the others gave up and started selling their houses because the renters were just that bad. We were still upside down on our place, so it wasn't an option for us. Eventually, the police told me that I needed to stop calling and that it wasn't their issue to deal with. That I was a bigger nuisance than the renters' music. It was at that time the housing market was taking off. Houses were selling in my area for $40 to $50K over appraisal value. My wife and I looked at what we needed to make so we could move and listed our home for that. In 3 days, we had a handful of obscene offers to choose from, but it was the lowest offer that stood out to us the most. Their offer was a good $20K under the next lowest, but they sent a letter. I'm a sucker for a letter, especially one with a picture of a young pregnant couple and a dog. And a patrol car? Turns out the young man is a police officer newly appointed at the local PD, and he takes his patrol car home. I knew at that point that this was the family to sell my house to. Money be damned. I moved out as the neighbors were throwing a huge party. The next day, the police moved in, and they haven't had another since. I drive by regularly on my way to my buddy's place. They just sit quietly in their garage looking bored. I make sure I honk and wave every time. I'm sure those jerks know I did it just to ruin their fun. Yeah, and I can't say I blame you either. I'm really surprised there was nothing the police could do in this instance. I would think maybe they would call the owner of the property and say, hey, your tenants are terrible and they're making everyone's lives miserable, you need to get rid of them. Or at least take them in for something, cause they've been warned how many times at this point? He's calling every night to complain about this. Meaning I would hope they've at least been to the house a few times to try and get them to quiet down. Also, they're having massive parties during lockdown. Is that not a problem as well? I really don't understand how nothing was done about this, and everyone who lived around them had to move out as a result. Someone was not doing their job. I made my vegetarian son clean out a freezer full of rotting meat. I go hunting every year. I'm not a trophy hunter by any means. I do it for meat and almost purely for economic reasons at this point. Taking a few deer off my property once a year helps keep my freezer stocked and the grocery bill way down, which is important because finances can be tight sometimes. As a little relevant background, the bulk of the meat is kept in a large freezer in the garage, and about once a week we pull out what we need for the next week or so, which means the freezer is normally only opened about once a week. My son, 15, decided that he was a vegetarian about 6 months ago, which my wife and I have no problems with. We started making meatless meals twice a week, and made sure every other dinner was such that the meat was separate from everything else so he could still eat with us. This has been working out great for the last 6 months with no complaints. However, last week when I pulled the meat for the week out of the freezer in our garage, he decided to come behind me and unplug the freezer. I guess he thought we weren't doing enough to support his cause. He never spoke to us or complained about our twice-a-week setup prior to unplugging the freezer. Well, as you can imagine, with a now unrefrigerated pile of meat in the summer heat, it didn't take long for the meat to start to rot and stink. The freezer kept the smell in for a while, so by the time we finally noticed, everything was completely putrid. I asked my son if he knew what happened, and he proudly said that he had unplugged it on purpose, and now we would have to be meat-free. I told him that he didn't have the right to ruin a freezer full of meat and raise the family's grocery bill without discussing it with anyone. I told him that as a part of his punishment, he had to clean up his mess. Dispose of all the rotting meat and either sufficiently clean and sanitize the freezer or purchase a new one out of his savings. He called me a jerk for making him interact with meat in any form, but he made the mess and he needs to clean it up. Am I the jerk? Look, Kid, that's great that you want to be a vegetarian and all, but you can't force that onto other people around you. And what you've done has cost your family a lot of money. It's rather ignorant of you. So yes, you need to learn a lesson here, and this is the way you're going to learn it. I think you should be happy that this is all you have to do. Of course, Dad did say this was only part of the punishment, so I guess we don't know how much worse it got for the kid, but I think they deserved it this time. My parents refused to call my kids by their names, so I had to put my foot down. My wife and I welcomed twins in November. We struggled to have children for a long time, 9 years, and had our twins via IVF. It was a long battle to have our babies, and when we chose their names, it was something we not only took seriously, but poured a lot of love into, because we knew they would be the only children we would name. We chose the names Ezra and Esme for the twins. Their middle names are more uncommon, so we won't share. But what I will say is part of what went into the choice for these names was the length. Growing up, I had a long last name, 10 letters, and my parents gave me a very formal and lengthy first and middle names, Frederick Lawrence. And I always found my name very stuffy and old-fashioned. I go by a nickname derived from my middle name now. I also took my wife's much simpler last name when we married. So we announced the name of our twins when they were a day old. And when we announced the names, we were aware my parents might not be in love with them. But I stupidly believed the twins being born would be enough of a deterrent for a negative comment. About a week after they were born, my parents asked what kind of names they had and how could we give them such juvenile and incomplete names. I told them that they were neither of those things, and they needed to be careful about how they spoke about their grandchildren's names. I thought they had listened, but then in January they started calling them Winifred and Douglas. At first, we weren't positive they were talking about the twins, but then we were celebrating my niece's 10th birthday and my parents directly addressed my daughter as Winifred, and I knew it was them they were talking to. I told them those were not their names. They said those were nicknames they had given them and everyone has a nickname. That it's not like we gave them names that could lend themselves to nicknames. I said Ezzy and Essie if they really wanted nicknames. They ignored me and they continued to use the nicknames. So we decided not to be around, because on top of that, they were telling my siblings that the names they had chosen were better for my children. My siblings thought they were crazy. My parents tried to see the kids a few times since, and I always told them no. They asked why, and I told them they don't get to see our children if all they can do is insult their names. My parents accused me of trying to control them and said nicknames are a part of life. I told them what they had done wasn't giving a nickname. It was renaming my children in their own heads, and my wife and I do not want them renaming them. I also said we will not further encourage the use of the nicknames they gave them. My parents said if I had stuck to the family way of naming babies, none of this would have happened, and they said I was being unfair to them. So am I the jerk here? Absolutely not the jerk on this one. I can't believe what your parents are trying to pull here. They're literally playing mind games with your kids, and then turning around and saying you're trying to control them. Your parents sound very old-fashioned and maybe a little bit delusional. They need to understand that these are your children. You named them this, and they need to deal with that. The family way of naming children doesn't have to be your way too. And the names they chose are god-awful, by the way. Jehovah's Witnesses keep sending unwanted Bible verses to my teenage son, so I send them adult catalogs as a taste of their own medicine. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. First off, let me say I don't have a problem with religion or the Jehovah's Witnesses in general. Now, the particular witnesses that have been assigned to come knocking on my door are especially tenacious. Every time they came, I politely told them I'm not interested. Thank you anyway, and sent them on their way. As long as people are respectful and not pushy, I realize that everyone has a job to do or service hours or whatever it may be. That being said, when COVID hit, door-to-door must have been suspended because no one came around at all for months and months. Back in November of last year, we received a letter addressed to my youngest son, who was 14 at the time, from, let's call them A. Smith. When he opened it, it was Bible verses. I thought it was strange, but my kids go to Catholic school, so maybe one of his friends was doing a church project or something. I let it go. It happened again 2 months later. I let it go again. Another 2 months after that, it happens again. So I ask my son, Brian, who is this and why are they sending this to you? He says, Mom, I don't know this person. Now I'm I'm irritated because number 1, I don't want anyone contacting my children that they don't know. Number 2, I don't want people sending us religious things that we don't want. It feels like a violation. I checked the return address and put it in Google Maps and it says Kingdom Hall Jehovah's Witness. I am furious. I call and get the answering machine and tell them to never send mail to my home that I didn't ask for again. I don't know A. Smith and my son doesn't want mail from A. Smith. And I hung up. I'm still so angry. This person sat down and wrote out Bible verses to send me against my will, then took the time to address them specifically to my 14-year-old son. If I was getting unwanted mail, so was A. Smith. I decided to send an Adam and Eve, which is an adult toy, and some lingerie catalogs to Kingdom Hall, addressed to A. Smith. If they're going to force me to get things I don't want in the mail, I'm going to force them to get things they don't want in the mail. An eye for an eye, jerks. Yeah, I totally understand the impulse on this one. My question is, how did they even get your son's information? I guess he must have answered the door at some point and gave them his name, not knowing any better. But either way, that's really scummy to take advantage of a kid who doesn't know what you're talking about. As fun as this was for our original poster, unfortunately, it's probably not going to have any kind of long-term impact. They'll still be going door to door. They rented out my apartment while I still had an active lease after refusing to let me move out early. Arkansas has well-known laws that lean heavily on the side of the property owner, which leaves the renter pretty vulnerable to owners who want to be difficult to say the least. Or at least they did when I lived there. I doubt much has changed since. So I moved into town and find a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment intending for it to be a short period of time while I scout out the town and look for a more permanent place. As for paying rent, they wouldn't/couldn't take an automatic monthly check from my bank or charge my debit card monthly. It had to be a paper check from me, with a 4-day late fee window. I hate writing checks, and I had the cash, so I paid out the 12-month lease all at once. I find a great place about 6 months later, thinking I'll just break my lease and pay the extra 1-month penalty and walk away from my apartment. I call and let them know I'll be moving out. Long conversation short, the way the lease is written makes you think that's how it works, when in reality, at a second or third read, I'm still liable for the entire 12-month lease, and to break the lease essentially adds a 13th month worth of rent money. Knowing that up front, why anybody would break a lease is beyond me. So at this point, I've already made the deposits on my new place when all of this comes to light, so I'm stuck with 2 places. I tell the apartment complex I won't be moving out. Figure I'll just go ahead and let the lease run out, set the AC to 80, and open the breakers to keep costs low. I slowly move my stuff to my new place since I have plenty of time now. And in the end, I leave behind my ironing board and iron just to leave something, and I never really use them anyways. About 2 months later, I get a call from the power company asking if it's okay to transfer power into somebody else's name. Shocked, I reply, absolutely not, while laughing a little on the inside. I decide to give it a day before I call the apartment complex. First thing the next morning, I get a call from the apartment complex and, with a super snarky entitled tone, I hear, "We need you to drop the power from your name so the new tenant can take over and move in." I explain that I still have an active lease on the place and can't fathom why they'd rent it out. She accuses me of abandonment and therefore she's allowed to rent the apartment. My reply went along the lines of, "I rent that apartment with the sole intent of having somewhere to iron my clothes. Did you not see my iron and ironing board there?" She said she did and she took it to the office to get it out of the apartment. We go back and forth on the semantics for a little. I let her know that I'm open to receiving a refund to the date of the new tenant's lease, and at that time I'd be happy to drop my name from the power. She refused and the call ended with getting her boss's number from corporate. After mentioning to her boss that I can recognize a breach of contract when I see it, and that nowhere in the lease does it say I actually have to live there, not to mention her employee admitted to entering my apartment and stealing items of mine from inside. She quickly assured me they're putting a check in the mail that day refunding my money to the first of that month, and told me that I could go to the office to pick up my iron and board anytime. Yes, I know they could have run up the power bill, but they'd only be able to do so much really. And a few days isn't that huge. And they didn't do it anyway. Even if they had, it would still be worth the expense considering the refund. I'm just happy I got my money back from those jerks. Yeah, as long as you're paying rent, it's none of their business what you do with the apartment. If you choose to have it for no reason other than to iron your clothes, that is your prerogative. They should just be happy they have a tenant who's paying rent and literally not causing any problems at all, cause they're never home. Honestly, to me, that sounds like a landlord's dream. They were probably just trying to get our original poster out so they could get the new tenants in and still dip into both at the same time, claiming that our original poster had violated the contract and still had to fulfill the months they had left, as well as claiming from the new tenants in the meantime. Maybe you pushed your luck just a little too far here. I hope the new tenant that moved in was absolutely horrible. Entitled mother refuses to let me park until her child finishes her drink. I was picking up my stepchild today for a couple of weeks. I stopped in a very busy convenience store to grab a few snacks, use the restroom, you know, the usual stuff. I'm trying to pull into the only non-handicap parking place available, and a woman with both passenger doors open is just standing there blocking me from entering the parking place. I roll down my window and say, "Excuse me, could you please close the door so that I can park?" She gives me the dirtiest look and says,
You have to wait until my child is done with her drink and is ready to go inside and use the bathroom.
I said, "Seriously, there are 20 other cars in this lot trying to get parked, and you can't close your doors for 30 seconds to allow one of them to park?" She proceeds to tell me it will only be a few more minutes and to just wait. Well, guess what, lady? My horn is only going to blast for a few minutes until you close the doors and let me park. She rather quickly shut the doors and allowed me to park. As I was getting out, her husband came out of the store and said,
I told you to shut the damn doors. Someone would need to park.
She looked very defeated as I went into the store. At least her husband's not a jerk. Yeah, I don't understand how some people's minds work. Like, if this entitled mother was on the other end of this situation, she would probably be blowing her top at the other person. But because it's her and her kid, other people just have to wait. It's literally the definition of entitlement. And kudos to the husband for calling her out on it. Just be a decent human being. My husband's assistant sent him a text asking when he was going to divorce me. My Kindle recently broke, so I've been using my husband's iPad to read ebooks. His phone is synced to it, so his messages show up on it. This morning, I was using it when he got a weird text from her. I didn't open it until I saw the message, "When are you going to divorce her?" The conversation went something like this. "Had another fight? You shouldn't put up with her. When are you going to divorce her?" "I'm not." "You should. She's using pregnancy to be awful to you. Do you realize that?" "We're not having this conversation." "We should." "Something work-related, something work." "Whatever, fine." My husband's assistant is also a family friend of his. They're like siblings, since they've known each other their whole lives, and she's always been nice to my face. I'm honestly shocked by the messages, and I don't know if I should say anything or just act like I never saw them. Do I confront her? Do I confront him? Or should I just drop it? And just to add for context, we had a dumb argument about pregnancy cravings. I'll admit it was mostly my fault, but my husband has a habit of buying me a small gift whenever we have an argument whilst he's at work, to try and avoid a second argument even if we've already made up, which I think is how she knows. I don't think he outright told her. It still just really feels like a jerk thing to say. Yeah, it definitely is a jerk thing to say. I mean, you're pregnant. It's understandable that things are going to be a little rough for you right now, and maybe some of that is trickling over onto your husband. But for his assistant, family friend or not, to say something like that to him is just inappropriate. Now, regarding your question about confronting them, that's a little bit tougher to answer. I don't really know if any good is going to come out of that, so I can't really recommend it, I think. At the end of the day, your husband made it clear that he was defending your relationship. That would be good enough for me. She can think whatever she wants, as long as you guys are happy. I kicked out my girlfriend over anime figurines. I, 29-year-old male, am a huge anime fan. I've been collecting anime figurines for the past 10 years. The first figurine being a gift from my late older sister. I had a huge collection of over 90 figurines, Figmas, scale statues, Gunpla models, etc., which I kept in a display case in our bedroom. When my older sister passed away a few years back, I received her massive collection of figurines. For obvious reasons, the collection I had was very near and dear to me. My girlfriend, 27-year-old female, has always known about my collection, and has never had a problem with it in the past. However, recently, she's started to become more and more critical of my collection. She says that it's taking up too much space in our room, and that it's childish. She also says that I'm spending too much money on expanding my collection. I tried to explain to her that my collection is important to me and that I'm not going to get rid of it, but she just doesn't seem to understand. The majority of my collection was given to me after my sister's passing, as it was a hobby we both shared and bonded over. Last week, I came home from work and I saw her moving a bunch of my figurines off the display case that I had set up and into a cardboard box. I asked her what she was doing, and she said she was taking them up into the attic. For more context, my display cases take up a lot of room, and we've been needing more space in our shared bedroom. I was reluctant, but eventually agreed to store the collection. This past weekend, I went up into the attic to grab one of my figurines, to show an online friend, and the entire box was missing. This, of course, started an intense argument with my girlfriend, in which she eventually admitted that she gave my collection away. When I pressed her on why she would do that, she said that I needed to grow up, as I'm almost 30 years old. She also said that she's tired of dating a man-child and thought I would grow out of it eventually. Afterwards, I told her I no longer wanted to be with her and that she needed to find another place to stay for the night. I don't have many hobbies, but this is something extremely important to me. I feel like this hobby keeps a part of my sister alive. I'm really hurt by what she did. I still love her, and I thought she loved me too, but I don't know if I can be with someone who doesn't accept the things I hold most dear. I've had time to cool down about our fight, and she's staying at her mother's house at the moment, but I don't really know if I've made the right choice. I asked my father for advice, and he told me that my sister wouldn't want her hobby to cause my relationship issues. But I'm not sure if I should take her back unless I get a huge apology and my collection back. I want her to know that this is more than just a hobby for me. So am I the jerk for kicking out my girlfriend over anime figurines? I could understand how to some people that might seem like something childish and insignificant, but the fact of the matter is it's important to you. And if this is going to be your significant other and you're spending a lot of time with them, then they need to accept you as you are. Getting into a relationship with the intention of changing the person or hoping they'll grow up is kind of manipulative. You're not accepting that person 100%. You see things that you like, but you also see things that in your mind you want to fix. But some of those things are the things that make that person who they are, and the person that you love. I don't think our original poster's in the wrong here. At the end of the day, you'll be happier with someone who loves the things that you love, or at least accepts that you love them. Your significant other is supposed to be someone who makes you feel comfortable, not constantly judged. I got my daughter an apartment instead of letting her move back in. I'm a 45-year-old female. My daughter Mallory is a 24-year-old female who got married 3 years ago. She has 2 children, 2 and 6 months. Recently, her husband revealed that he's been cheating on her and is leaving her for another woman. They rent a house, but due to my daughter having no credit at the time of moving in, only his name is on the lease, and he's giving her 30 days to move out. Mallory is understandably distraught. I've been doing all I can to comfort her. She asked if she could move in with me, explaining she'd have the kids every other week. She assured me she isn't looking for childcare. Both kids are in daycare. She offered to pay rent and chip in on groceries. Now, I've always raised my kids to be independent. I didn't kick them out at 18, but I did encourage them to start doing things on their own. Mallory moved out at 19, moving in with her soon-to-be ex. My sons are in college and plan to move out after graduating from college. They're both freshmen at the same university. I asked Mallory how her credit score was. She said she could reasonably rent. I offered to pay first month, last month, and a deposit, along with 6 months rent. She said it's not about the money. She's not wealthy by any means, but she does well for herself and her husband is already agreeing to give her money weekly, even before they go to court. She just wants emotional support. I told her that I could do that with her living in her own place. She started to cry and said she just needs her mom right now. I told her she was going to be okay. My sons are peeved with me. They pointed out I have plenty of room and that Mallory has offered to pay rent. She's also not the type to shrug off responsibility of the kids and the toddler is well behaved. To me, that doesn't matter. They called me heartless. So, am I the jerk? Okay, I get what you're trying to do here. You're trying to make your child more independent so that ultimately she's stronger out the other side. But what she's going through right now is really big for her. She said that she really just doesn't want to be alone right now and just wants her mom. I understand wanting to teach your child to be strong, but you also need to teach them that it's okay to be weak sometimes, and that when they are, that you'll be there to support them. I just feel like you're taking it too far. My boyfriend and I got into a huge fight since him and his twin sister are a little too close. I, 21-year-old female, and my boyfriend, 21-year-old male, had a massive fight last night over his 21-year-old female twin sister. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years, and there hasn't been a hitch so far. The only problem is his sister's jealousy. To be completely honest, I've tried my absolute best to be nice to her and accept their twin bond. I understand this is something I will never fully comprehend. However, she's just been awful. While there's been a history of these events, the inciting incident for the argument happened last weekend. The three of us went to a concert. He and his sister are really big fans of the band, but I was mostly going to appease my boyfriend. Tickets were pretty expensive and he bought mine. However, and I think my boyfriend is at fault for this one, my boyfriend and his sister's tickets were for the pit. I was stuck alone in the stands. I didn't realize that we'd be in different spots until we arrived at the concert. When we arrived, my boyfriend was apologetic. He tried to spend as much time with me as possible in the stands. But his sister wouldn't stop calling him. She was begging him to go back down to the pit so they could secure some good spots before the band came out. An hour before the opening band even started. He promised me he'd come back up to see me during the show, after they'd played his favorite songs. In essence, he never came back. It was about an hour and a half, and I looked down at the pit to see his sister with her arms wrapped around his neck. This was the final straw. I stormed out before the concert ended. I texted my boyfriend telling him to come to my house after the concert was over. He never showed up. I came to find out the next morning that this was because his sister wouldn't let him. She stole his phone and insisted they had to spend the night together as this was their special night. I had a huge fight with him over this last night, telling my boyfriend that his sister was possessive and overly obsessed with him. In a moment of blind rage, I told him that their relationship was weirdly romantic. My boyfriend was furious and explained it was disgusting for me to suggest such a thing. He stormed out of my house and I haven't spoken to him since. Again, there have been several other incidents. Last year, my boyfriend bought me a beautiful necklace for my birthday, and his sister insisted that I was a gold digger. She commented on the fact that he hadn't bought her an expensive gift for their birthday that year. This deeply upset me and made me feel as though I was undeserving of my boyfriend's generosity. The sister and I also work at the same place. My boyfriend's sister consistently makes me cover for her shifts so that she can hang out with him. So am I the jerk? Okay, so in this specific incident that we're talking about, I'm kind of looking at your boyfriend as the one at fault here. I don't know what made him think that that was okay for you to have a seat somewhere else, especially if he knows you're not really a fan of the band that they're going to see. Now, moving beyond that, it is a little weird how obsessed his sister is with him. I get that as twins they are probably very close, but you have to understand as you get older, things are going to change. Your brother has a girlfriend now, and of course he's going to want to spend time with her. That doesn't mean that your relationship has lost any value, it just means that he's building other relationships as well. And it's something that you should be happy about. I don't think it's fair the way our original poster is being treated. But at the same time, your romantic comment was probably going too far. Whether you're upset or not, the reaction to that is not going to be good. It really sounds like there's fault for everyone here. But I understand how you're feeling and where you're coming from. His sister really needs to just learn to give you guys your space. And I'm sure her and her brother will still do things together as well. It just needs to be about mutual respect. It sounds like our poster's trying. It just needs to start coming the other way. This just sounds like you have two people that care a lot about the same person. And somehow it's becoming a bad thing. You both see what makes him awesome. You guys should be able to bond over that. Touching on the other awkward fact that you guys work together, maybe use that time to try and get a little closer. Who knows, maybe you guys will even end up being good friends. But at the end of the day, if she's not going to open up at all, then there's not really much you can do about it. I don't know. As I said, there's a little bit of wrong from everyone here. If all parties involved are willing to acknowledge that, then maybe something can work out. Entitled Mother thinks my son's birth is her special day. So I ghosted her on her special day. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. Okay, so the entitled parent in this story is my mom. Back in April of this year, my wife had our baby. During that time, COVID was still rampant and restrictions were still strict. The hospital rules were that my wife was allowed to have 2 people on file that could visit her, but only one could be in the hospital at a time. Being her husband and the father of the child, she obviously chose me as her first support person, and then she chose my mom as her second. My wife was high risk, so she planned to have a C-section. Prior to the operation, I texted my mom, getting ready to go back to the operating room, say a quick prayer. Then I went back with my wife. She ended up losing a lot of blood during the surgery, so her recovery took a really long time, several hours before I was even allowed to see her. During my wife's recovery, I was in the nursery with the baby making sure that everything was okay with him. About an hour into my wife's recovery, a nurse comes in and says, "Hey, there's someone on the phone asking for you. Can I transfer them over?" I say sure, and the phone in the nursery rings, so I answer it. "Hello?"
How dare you don't answer me? I've been texting and calling all day.
"What do you mean? I don't even have my phone. My wife is still in recovery."
You're a liar. You texted me earlier that you were going back to the surgery room.
Yeah, I did. But then I left my phone in the hospital room so that I could be emotionally supportive to my wife and not be on the phone during the birth of my child.
What? You mean you didn't even take a video of the surgery? I told everyone that I would have videos to post.
No, I didn't. And even if I did, they wouldn't be for Facebook.
I can't believe you. Don't talk to me that way. I can't believe that you would do this to me on my day.
Then I got tired of her and just hung up the phone mid-conversation. I then just didn't talk to her for a while and finally had time to get my phone back. I take some pictures of the baby and send them to my mom, hoping she was just being emotional earlier and give her a call.
Why would you do this to me?
Do what to you?
Push me away like this. It's been hours and I haven't been able to see the baby.
Huh? My wife is still in recovery. You're lucky I'm even able to send you pictures.
I don't care if she's still in recovery. I should be allowed to come see him. This is my day and you're ruining it.
Ma, listen. I love you, but you're not doing this to me today. I'll talk to you later. And I hung up again. Later that day, after my wife was back in the normal room and out of recovery, and she had been checked on multiple times and was able to get up and walk a little bit, we let my mom come see the baby. Remember, while she was in there, I had to leave the room due to COVID policy. The whole time she was in the room with the baby and my wife, she was complaining about how we pushed her out, left her in the dark, and ruined her day. And she kept me away from my baby by not leaving for more than an hour. I know that this isn't as radical as some of the other stories, but it's still entitled and narcissistic. And trust me, I have plenty more stories of my own mom being an entitled mother, but maybe more on that next time. No, trust me, my friend, this one's pretty bad. I'm surprised you even let her come at all. Your wife really took one for the team having to spend an hour in there with her. Just after a C-section too. It is incredible how she managed to convince herself so thoroughly that this day was somehow about her. I get that you're excited, but it's a hectic day for those involved. You need to be a little understanding, especially during COVID times. Things are a little more strict. Trust me, they're excited to share the news with you too. But if anyone's ruining the day, it's you. You made it all about yourself. It's just a jerk move. Our office drama queen gets a new BS lunchtime policy instated, so I use it to screw her over. Many years ago, I worked in back office support in a large office with lots of departments. Generally speaking, we had core hours, especially for lunch. Core lunch hours were between 12 to 2, meaning you had to take your lunch sometime between 12 to 2. Different departments had different rules for lunch, depending on their needs. For example, the call center was strict for when people could take their lunch, since they needed constant phone coverage. However, I was in back office support. Things were a lot more relaxed because we rarely took phone calls. Most of our work came in the form of tickets and tasks logged through our system, and emails from other departments with general inquiries. The only requirement was that at least one manager and 2 members of staff had to be there at all times, in case a colleague from another department needed to see us, or in an emergency, call us. So generally, we could take our lunch anytime we wanted, as long as it was between 12 and 2. There was no policy telling us when to take our lunch, aside from the one that I already mentioned. I would always take my lunch at 12:28. The reason was I actually wanted to take it at 12:30, but one of our call centers was the floor above us, and they stampeded down the stairs at 12:30. I had been in an accident some years ago that gave me issues with my back and hips, so I could be a little unsteady on the stairs. So I left at 12:28 so I could avoid the call center stampede. I suppose I could have gone at 12, but the staff canteen was never set up and never had food ready at 12, hence why I left at 12:28. Now, I always restarted work at exactly 1:28, sometimes a few minutes earlier. An hour was far too long for me, so I was often back at my desk nursing a coffee while scrolling through my phone around 1 p.m., which we were allowed to do as long as we were on break. However, if a colleague came up to me and asked for help, I always helped, and just added the time I was helping them to my lunch. So if I spent 10 minutes helping a colleague, I'd come back at 1:38. All this would be logged in our timesheet. I wasn't doing anything outside of policy. We were allowed to do this. Anyway, one of my colleagues had obviously noticed. Let's call her Mindy. Mindy considered herself the queen bee of the office. Everything had to be done her way. She was perfect and she always tattled on people for petty stuff. Like that one of our colleagues used too many staples, or that colleagues were literally a few minutes late, or took too many pee breaks. She literally had a tally of how many drinks and pee breaks everyone took so she could tattle. She even once tried to tattle and say one of my colleagues came in drunk and she could smell it on her breath. What she could smell was Lemsip and cold meds. The colleague she was tattling on had a cold. Unfortunately, Mindy was also our manager's favorite employee, so she got away with a lot. So she tattles to our manager about how I'm always leaving for lunch 2 minutes early and yet often come back late. My manager tears me a new one for this. I explain to him that the times I come back late are when I've helped a colleague, and he should see it logged on the sheet. I also explain why I leave at 12:28. He then says,
Yes, well, whether it's 2 minutes or not, we have core hours in this office.
I say, yeah, 12 to 2. I can take my lunch anytime between 12 and 2. 12:28 is within those core hours. So he then tried to say no. In our department, we have a policy of 12:30 to 1:30 to make sure enough people are in the department. I say, I've never heard of this policy. This has never been the case. But he brushes me off and says,
Take your lunch at 12:30 and come back at 1:30. You don't deal with any queries or anything that will delay you. Just take your lunch on time and come back on time. No exceptions.
Okay then, that's exactly what I'll do. No matter what I'm doing, even if I'm in the middle of a task, I get up and go to lunch. Even if I'm at my desk and a colleague comes to me, I tell them I'm on lunch and to come back later. Then, surprise, surprise, Mindy comes along with an urgent query at 1:10. I look her dead in the eye and say, sorry, I'm on lunch. She storms off to our manager to tattle on me. I get called into his office because she had lodged a complaint against me for bullying her and being uncooperative. Mindy is in the office with my manager acting as a mediator. He asks why I refuse to help her. She's grinning maliciously with her trademark "you're gonna get it" face. She spoke to me at 1:10. I had 20 minutes left of lunch. You said the policy is lunch 12:30 to 1:30, no exceptions. I said, smiling. Mindy looked like she wanted to slap me, and my manager was furious, but knew he couldn't do or say anything because that was what he said. Eventually, the manager ended up being promoted and moved to another department. Our new manager had no patience for Mindy's excessive tattling, and at one point shouted at her, "This isn't primary school and I'm not your teacher. Go back to your desk and focus on your own work instead of everyone else." The new manager also rescinded the no exceptions BS policy my manager had made on the spot. And as long as we came back on time and didn't leave the department understaffed, she couldn't care less when we took our lunch. Sorry, Mindy. Maybe next time, don't be a jerk. I can only imagine how little work this woman got done around the office. She's keeping tallies of how much people drink and when they go to the bathroom? Come on, you're telling me there isn't better stuff you can be doing with your time? You're gonna sit there and be so judgmental of how others use their time when you're wasting your time doing this? I'm glad the new manager came in and called her on it right away. I wouldn't have any patience for that either. Hopefully now that she doesn't feel that she's being rewarded by the new manager for her information, she'll actually get to work and leave everyone else alone. I told my wife that if she wants the kids to sleep with her, then she can go sleep in their bed. My wife and I have been together for 6 years. She is a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. When we first got together, they were both still in her bed. They were both relatively small and I worked nights, so it was never an issue. Last year, I suffered a work injury and now have to sleep on a memory foam mattress. I assumed by now both kids would have grown out of co-sleeping, but obviously haven't. I can't comfortably sleep in a bed with 2 kids, especially because my stepson, the 9-year-old, is a little ninja. He's constantly kicking during the night. They'll occasionally sleep in their own beds, but very rarely. My stepdaughter is a little better, but my stepson will have meltdowns if we try and send him to his own bed. My wife doesn't believe we should force them out, which I understand, but I keep sleeping on the couch when they're in the bed. A couple of days ago, I blew up over it. My back's killing. I'm tired. I essentially told her to take the kids and sleep in one of their beds. I need the comfortable mattress for my back. We We never really got to discuss it because stepson got upset and started crying. That night, she took the kids to her parents for the night, and back at home, she explained that they wouldn't all fit in one of the kids' beds. She agreed that I could have the big bed, but is ordering a memory foam mattress for our son's bed so I can sleep there comfortably. I don't want to sleep in a kid's bed. I want my bed, and I'd like to actually spend a night with my wife. Her parents are on her and the kids' side, obviously, but I still don't think I should have to give up my bed for them. In the nicest way possible, I paid for it. The issue is getting worse, and my in-laws are now calling me abusive for trying to take their comforts. So, am I the jerk? I don't think you're being a jerk at all. That's your space and you're perfectly entitled to it. The kids need to grow up a little bit and spend the night in their own room. It's not like they're infants anymore. It sounds like you've been incredibly patient up until this point, but it's entirely reasonable that you want to sleep in your bed. That's like a bare minimum. It's not really fair that you're being treated like the family dog that gets to sleep on the couch. A conversation definitely needs to happen with the kids here. And the grandparents have no business here. They have no right to call you abusive. If anything, you're doing this to help the kids. They shouldn't be doing this at their age, and they need to be more independent. An entitled customer was being ridiculously rude to a waiter, so I mixed her a nice, strong drink. A while ago, I was working for a popular restaurant chain. I was a bartender there, but frequently picked up serving shifts. Often, I was responsible for training our new employees, and honestly, I preferred training them so they knew how to do the job properly. As such, I was pretty much responsible for training the majority of our new hires, and because I spent their first few weeks at their side, I felt responsible for them. Anyway, one particular server I had was this sweet boy who was great with customers and would literally bend over backwards to please someone. I don't know if I've met anyone who cared about others like this since. As such, I felt particularly protective over this boy. One particular shift, I was bartending and he was serving a larger party that had been sat near my bar. I could overhear everything that was happening while he served them. The lady, who I assumed was the head of the party, would not give this kid a break and was constantly talking over him, asking for things that we never had on the menu. Of course, claiming she had it last time, giving him attitude for non-existent items, basic entitled customer nonsense. I could see this server was visibly becoming flustered with the table, but unfortunately in food, that's what you have to learn to deal with. The turning point for me was when she snapped at the server over a birthday song. Our establishment does not sing happy birthday to tables. However, we do offer a free sundae. The server explained this, but she was not having it. He even very politely offered to sing, but warned her it would only be him singing as the other servers likely wouldn't join in. She was incredibly rude to him about this, and I was behind the bar fuming. As he finally goes to ring in their entree order, she rudely asks him for another mojito, saying that I hadn't made it properly. Another thing to note is that our location is next to a hockey stadium, so based off whether we have a game or not, we'll prepare drinks in different glasses. I hadn't been thinking and had made the drink in the wrong glass, so of course I was fine remaking it in a proper glass. She might have been a witch, but I did use the wrong glass for a non-game day. Apparently, she thought she deserved more alcohol since I made a mistake. She sent the drink back and ordered my server to tell me to give her more liquor. One thing you never tell a bartender to do, make my drink stronger. So, of course, I remade her mojito with 0 alcohol, except for 2 drops of rum down her sip straw. She certainly enjoyed her stronger drink and even ordered 2 more. Hope you enjoyed paying almost $30 for 3 drinks with maybe a quarter ounce of liquor altogether. Don't mess with my servers or insult my drinks, jerk. Yeah, entitled people who are rude to people that work in customer service are just the worst. It's like they've never had to be humble a day in their lives. I've never worked in the restaurant industry, but I can imagine when you have people getting all drunk and rowdy and things like that, it must be 10 times worse. This seems totally fair and justified. You probably saved the waiter a lot of extra grief by not letting her get drunk. I made my entitled nephew cry at his birthday party after he was rude about the gifts he received. I'm a 26-year-old female. My sister, 29, has a son, Eric, and he's 8 years old. I don't visit a lot, we live far away, but I see them and most of my family at birthdays and holidays. When I visit, I usually buy Eric a toy or some candy, as he's my only nephew. To be honest, I like to spoil him. And maybe I'm a little bit to blame for what happened too. It was Eric's birthday this week. I visited them and brought him a nice car toy. The car was quite big and had lights and stuff. When I got to the party, I wished him a happy birthday and handed him the gift. He opened it and loved it. He said, "So far, this is the best one," which at the time, I thought he was just excited. But with what happened later, I kinda get the idea it was more maliciously intended. So an hour or so after the party started, when everyone had already arrived, Eric made an announcement to the table in which the adults were sitting. He said that I've won and that I was now the person who he loved the most because my gift was the one he liked the most. I thought it was sweet that he liked it. Then he told my mom that her gift sucked. She brought him a board game, so he didn't love her anymore. He also told one of his friends that next year he won't be invited because his gift was bad too. He'd gifted him a set of dinosaur figures. I think this whole thing of ranking the gifts people got him was pretty crappy. I expected my sister or her husband to say something, but they didn't. They just laughed. So I told Eric that he's not supposed to say that about his gifts. People get them what they can, and he should be grateful with that. He said that he doesn't understand why he has to love people who don't buy him nice gifts. I genuinely can't believe my sister is teaching this bull to her son. His dad told him, "Yeah, they should all give you the best." So I then again told him that a person's worth is not about how expensive or big the gift they got him was, and that if he thought that way, then I will not be continuing to buy him gifts. Eric started to cry. My sister told me off because I made him cry, but most of my family and some of her in-laws were on my side and told them it was bad to teach their kids such things. Our mom was quite affected, and I wanted to leave too, so we left after that. My sister texted me later to call me a jerk for leaving before the candles were blown, and for telling her child he won't get any more gifts from me. She said that I shouldn't make empty threats to a child. I said that it's not empty. And it's not a threat, it's a promise, until they teach their kids some manners. Am I wrong for discussing this when my nephew was present? Am I being unreasonable to him since he's young? And would I be wrong in the future if I keep my promise and don't buy him a gift the next time we see each other? At the end of the day, I don't want to be a jerk to the kid. No, I don't think you did anything wrong here. Someone had to say it. It should have been mom and dad, but heck, if they're not stepping up to the plate, maybe he'll listen to you since you're his new favorite. Also, you hold the power of the good presence. You have sway over him that no one else does. Seriously though, I don't understand how the parents don't correct this entitled behavior. No one likes a snobby little brat. I know all parents think their kids are the greatest, but you still need to raise them to be a decent human being. You want them to have the best? Then they can't have people hating them all the time because they're entitled snobs. That's on you, mom and dad. You need to teach those lessons. My boyfriend absolutely flipped out because I ate all the toppings off of his pizza. Earlier tonight, I ordered a Hawaiian pizza with my boyfriend. We've only been dating a month, so it's the first time I ate pizza with him. We only finished about half and then we went to watch TV. I was still hungry, so I ate all the toppings off the pizza. When he saw, he absolutely flipped out. He said that he was saving it for lunch tomorrow, and that he had never met anyone who would do something like this, and was just generally really upset. I thought he was joking and laughed it off, but it's been a couple of hours and he's still upset. He's talking about how he was looking forward to having the leftover pizza for lunch, and now I've ruined his lunch. I offered to buy him another pizza, but he kept saying that it wasn't about that, and I just ruined his day. Is he overreacting or am I the jerk? Well, I hope you learned your lesson. Never come between a man and his pizza. Seriously though, you're some kind of monster. Why would you just eat the toppings off the pizza if you're still hungry? Just eat a slice of pizza. You've literally ruined the rest of the food just so you can have a few snack-sized bites? I just don't understand the logic here. I mean, at least you offered to buy him another pizza. Maybe he is overreacting here. I mean, I would probably just laugh this off, but I agree that most normal people wouldn't have done what you did. So gotta side with him on this one.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.